January 17th council meeting, back to virtual, but I want to take this opportunity to again wish everyone a very happy new year, and to pay particular attention to all of our staff who are with us this afternoon, who will be participating in our budget discussions, to all of our viewing public, and to you, council, for attendance today. We have all councillors in attendance, and with that, I will call this meeting to order. And the first order of business is to have our land acknowledgement, and Councillor Bell will take us through that today. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation, Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. And I will ask everyone to join us in a moment of reflection as we consider the business before us. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of interest around the council table, pecuniary or otherwise? And it is noted that if one should arise during the proceedings, please feel free to communicate that with us. And with that, we'll move into announcements. And I will ask first if there's anyone around the table that has announcements for us today. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to share that County of Grey is hosting a virtual public meeting on February the 3rd at 1:30 to discuss official plan amendment number 11. And this is important because of where we are in the Municipality of Meaford and our own official plan updating process. Amendment number 11 looks at provisions for secondary suites, tiny homes, and so on, now known as ADUs or additional dwelling units. It will look at density targets and updated growth projections. The meeting can be accessed via Zoom link or by phoning in. And you can check the county website at grey.ca to get further information, or call 519-372-0219, extension 1232. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seeing no other announcements from councillors, I'll proceed with a few that I have. And of course, many of them relate to the return to phase 2 of the step 2 of the roadmap to reopen in an effort to combat the recent increases in COVID-19 cases and specifically the hospitalizations. With that, we do have a number of closures within the municipal facilities. All of them are closed until January 26th, possibly to the end of the month. The Municipal Administration Office in Trowbridge is closed till the end of January. Phones will be answered, though, between the hours of 8:30 and 4:30, Monday to Friday, at our usual number, 519-538-1060. Generally, email inquiries can be sent to info@meaford.ca. And there is a phone number for after-hours support that I will let everyone know. It's 1-888-525-7024. All essential services such as emergency services, bylaw, water, wastewater services, road maintenance, garbage and recycling will continue as usual. Unfortunately, we had to cancel our January the 9th meet and greet and skating party, but it is just postponed, and we hope to bring that back in February when we can safely gather again. However, the Mayford Public Library is open. In fact, has new hours beginning in January. They were opening on Sunday as well, with COVID safety protocols in place, of course. Just want to mention that our official plan review is underway, and an online survey is now available for public input. We've already had significant public comment and responses to this survey, and so certainly encourage everyone to share your ideas on how the needs that you see in our community, and to make sure that we have your participation. There will be many other opportunities for participating in the review process, and we will be providing updates on those opportunities very soon. Just wanted to mention too that COVID-19 vaccination clinics are open and ready to serve you. And again, you can book an appointment on covid-19.ontario.ca. The Hockey Hub in Owen Sound has many appointments available now, but they will be closing on January 21st. So if you are still looking to get your vaccinations, please do so as soon as possible. And my last announcement is just a heads up and a notice that in October of this year, the CAO and I participated in an interview with the editor-in-chief of the Business View magazine, Laurie Steiner. We also included our community partner, People Care President Megan Allen Lamb, and her communications director in this interview. And the result was a 12-page feature article in Business View magazine. This is a periodical that is a global leader in multi-platform business to business profiles, news, and opinions, with 840,000 subscribers across North America. So very, very proud of the effort that has been put forward to bring this feature article about our community and how well we're doing. So very, very pleased to have that out in the public view. Again, I'll ask if there's any further announcements from council. Seeing none, then we will move on to public participation. And this is part of the meeting to begin the meeting where we welcome the public participation through presentations, through delegations on items that appear on our agenda, or for questions from our audience. Obviously, we have to do it virtually again. But again, today we have a presentation with regard to our communication strategy that we've been waiting a significant time for, and are very, very pleased to welcome the letter M, the consultants who conducted this project. And we have Stacey, McCarthy, and Doug MacMillan with us today. So welcome to you both, and thank you for your efforts on our behalf, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate the time today. Your announcement was a great setup to hear about the Business View magazine a focus article. This speaks to the power of communications. Congratulations. That's a very exciting piece of awareness building for Meaford. So thank you for the time today. We appreciate being able to take you through some of the good work that's been done by my team on the communications strategy. This is right in our wheelhouse. Our communications agency has been doing this work specifically in the municipal sector for about 4 decades. So we've seen a lot of examples of what to do, what not to do. And most certainly in my career, we've seen communications shift from being a bit of a side of the desk, a few things we can do type of an initiative, to a very significant and strategic priority for any organization, and most certainly for local government. So I'm joined by Stacey McCarthy, who will take you through the majority of the plan in just a few minutes. Stacey is one of our senior account managers, and again, has been doing this for quite a while. And I'll tip my hat to Stacey for handling the great bulk of this project work with your team. And I must sort of punctuate that, we had a very strong working partnership with the staff that we were working with in Meaford, and that really made for a better product. It made us understand what is happening in your community. It truly was a great collaboration of us bringing our expertise and experience, and your team bringing a knowledge of Meaford. And it's a very specific community. No two local communities are alike. We've learned that a long time ago. So tip my hat as well to the partnership there. So I'll ask to advance the slide, please. So, why are we doing this? Well, as I say, I mean, it's gone from being something that maybe was an afterthought to being a huge priority. You put a lot of effort a few years ago into the strategic priorities plan that are guiding the work that you and your staff team are doing. This helps you get that done. It builds a sense of understanding of those priorities, but also why they're important and how they make the community stronger and better. It really does build trust when you're forward and proactive and transparent with information. It makes it a lot easier for people to continue to participate in those conversations. And that's another key advantage is you need to do your jobs as local government leaders based on the input of your community. You are being guided by all of those voices, and effective communications and engagement work will support you in doing that. So it's, we could spend half an hour just talking about why it's important, but really building that sense of community starts with effective communication. And if we look at the last 2 years, having a strong communication plan in place makes it a lot easier to communicate vital information around emergencies or crises and critical situations such as what we've all been dealing with. So this is an important piece of work, and we appreciate you finding time, especially on a budget day, my condolences, to give us some time. Next slide, please. So every piece of work like this has to start with a strong vision. What is it that we're looking to achieve at the end of it, and what does success look like? And this, after a lot of work and discussion, was defined as really the communication vision for the municipality. It's to support a high quality of life for residents. At the end of the day, people want to live, work, and play there and enjoy the best possible quality of life. Your staff team, your leadership helps make that happen through the municipal services and the programs. Sorry, just one more slide ahead, please. Thank you. So that vision is to say that we are embracing the diverse, thriving, and growing community by sharing the stories of who we are, what makes us thrive, and what makes us better. And that's an important piece of this vision, because communications is at its core making sure that vital information gets across. Beyond that is about building brand and building community and building culture. And you have an opportunity to help share those stories and those achievements and build that community pride together. And then thirdly, this vision is to encourage that collaboration that I speak of in an open, trusting environment where everyone has an opportunity to bring that voice and that perspective to the table so that you can engage with those people. And as I say, it helps you do your job. It helps your staff do their job. Next slide, please. So this has to be guided then by the values that this communications team, that all of the staff, and that everyone in this room holds true and dear to doing this work as most effectively as possible. And so the first being, partly foundational, it has to be timely, it has to be as proactive as possible, accurate and clear, and that's where plain language is important. And often in government, that can be the tricky part, is that we are all, in the middle of a lot of very complex information. I heard earlier about ARUs and building affordable and flexible housing units. Well, clear, simple communication is the way to help the community wrap their heads around and really participate in those programs. The value of ensuring responsive feedback. So we get back to you, we circle back quickly. If we don't have an answer, we commit to getting it to you. The collaboration that will keep coming up today, Being creative and focused on what's emerging and what is innovative. This is a fast moving train that we're on in communications, and we're all on the internet now, so we certainly understand how that works. But every day there's a new tool to reach a certain audience, and we have to make sure that we understand it and are putting it through the lens of what's important to a municipality. Does it reach people? Is it effective? Is it a prudent use of your resources, the staff, and the budget? So all of those questions have to be asked frequently. The fact that we are proactive and relevant, and that there is always an environment of openness, transparency, and trust. So those are the kind of the lenses that the team and that everyone will look through in building the communications work that would be ongoing in this plan. So I'm going to stop there and invite Stacey to jump in and share some more specifics of the plan with the group. Thank you.
You, Your Worship, and councillors and valued guests. Good morning, happy or good afternoon, happy Monday. I just want
Monday.
to. Is it Monday or is it Friday? I wanted to preface it with a thank you to everyone for allowing us to be a part of this work. Gotten to know a small percentage of what you do over the last year, and it continues to be a very rewarding experience, and we're proud of what we've delivered in collaboration with your team. So thank you for the opportunity for today. Certainly. So yes, it has been just over a year at this point. COVID throwing its wrenches in as it needs to, and I know there's been some staff turnover, and it's been very exciting. But we're pleased to finally arrive at the final draft of the strategy now. It pulled in a lot of different areas of research and discovery. So a few of those are listed here. Our team dug into more than 30 pieces of materials. We lived on your website for a day and your social media for a day. We did a year's worth of online and print media analysis to get a sense of what they're saying, how they're saying it, and frequency for media. We did some best practice interviews there that I've noted. There were seven, I believe, including Center Wellington, Owen Sound, Town of Blue Mountains, where we chatted with them one-on-one to discuss things like staffing, prioritizing, internal communications, to learn from those who've done it well, and those who've done it and learned their lessons. There were also community council and staff interviews, and I see a few familiar names here, at least 3 or 4 of you, I think, who have participated in those, and hopefully you'll see your words in the final strategy there, you'll recognize them. And then finally, we completed it with a broad community survey, of which more than 431 or 32, actually 435, I think, responses were received, and there was a gift card giveaway that resulted in what we believe to be that kind of high number. So there was a great deal of success there. So altogether, this is what informed our strategies and recommendations going forward, not to discount the ongoing conversations we had with Janet and team, more broadly, just to kind of get the nuances that are critical for each municipality. So if I could ask for the next slide, please. Oh, sorry, that was one I just chatted about. Yeah. Sorry, the next slide. There we go. So what did we learn after all of this? Starting from a position of strength, there's a lot of great bones there, which is important to build on and not forget. It's easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. But your team, your communications team, has done a lot of great work in building up a fairly strong arsenal of tools and skills, knowledge to build on. So we wanted to make sure that we started with the positives. The number one being that there is clear council and senior staff support for communications. This is often not the case, and it can be a little bit of an uphill struggle. So when we have that support from the top down from the start, it really sets that, as I say, that strong foundation to build bigger and better and smart, more certainly smart. Second point there, strong, integrated, and supportive team. It's a skilled and cohesive team. And there's a lot of great examples of them supporting departments very well already. So there was some great ideas there to build from. Number 3 is there's generally a very positive and supportive relationship with media. which isn't, again, always the case. So there's some strong representatives in that area, which continue to serve as trusted sources for a majority of your audience. Point number 4 there, fairly effective use of the website and social media, very well done, fairly well advanced. Some room to grow, but not a complete refresh of the efforts to date for sure. And the final point is that there is very strong and appealing graphic design at the heart of many of the materials that we had an opportunity to take a look at. So lots of great stuff to start with. So the next slide, if you please. So now what? So the areas that we can build on. That there's the first point there's a strong focus for issues management, planning, strategize, and evaluation is currently a little bit lacking in its formality and ongoing attention is an area where we would like to explore, pardon me. The second point there is, this was generally mentioned in a lot of the interviews and in particular the survey, that communications are often late or people didn't see them. We realize this isn't always the case and things just get missed. But there's hope that fitting communications planning early into a department's development and brainstorming phase is critical to make sure that this isn't an ongoing issue going forward. Digital enhancement would be the website, just making sure that information is easy to find as possible, it's up to date, things that are done and gone are removed and not continuing to be accessible. The fourth point, simplification, and the fifth point, accessible, kind of go together a little bit. Making sure that things are simple and accessible, easy to understand, can be accessed by urban and rural, not heavy and formal, and really kind of helps to educate and help people understand municipal processes and services and things of that sort. The second last point, strategic positioning of communications, is just making sure that communications has standing and representation on equal footing with other departments and an appreciation of their skills and their knowledge in the rather nuanced and particular world that is communications. It does require experience and skill. So continuing to promote that amongst broader staff outside of council and senior who we know already get it. And the final point there was just a note, not overly scary to address, but that some departments are continuing to do their own things visually, and it might lead to a little bit of disjointedness and a lack of cohesiveness, pardon me, amongst materials. So next slide, please. Thank you. So we boiled this all down, so the strengths and the opportunities, into 4 clear goals. So each goal has its objectives as well, and under each objective we have specific action items that we recommended. So this is detailed in quite full format in the final strategy and makes for good bedtime reading, but I'll kind of touch on some of the broader items here and welcome your questions at the end if there's anything. So first goal, number 1, easy peasy, communicate clearly, concisely, openly, and proactively. So that's a big one. So we've broken it down into 3 core objectives there. So the first one is a focus on visual, and the item that we're recommending to kind of jumpstart that objective is more formal and informal videos. There's been some great strides done in this, particularly with the kind of 5-minute council. So there's a great way to kind of build on that and present more and more and more as more of that kind of visual first, which we know is the way things are going, and it's well known that information is retained more effectively through visual communications rather than written, unfortunately or fortunately. Number 2 there, keep it simple. That means the action item we recommended for that is that there be an increase in those summary reports that you've done, the budget and brief, the CIP as well. Really, really great condensing of what can be heavy formal into something that's easier to digest and puts it in the perspective of the end user. Very well done. So we recommend that be something that be continued and adopted moving forward. And finally, the third objective, proactively identify and manage issues. In the strategy, we've recommended a fairly fulsome issues management process. So that includes steps of forecasting, analyzing, and how to address those issues moving forward. So that's goal number 1. So next slide, please, is goal number 2. And that is to increase engagement and input from stakeholders, a critical goal for most municipalities at this point. The desire to have more public input continues to be a struggle in some areas. And we found out, from the best practice interviews that it's a common struggle. There's not, Meaford's not special in that it struggles with this sometimes. Others feel the same pain, and we're continuing to try and find just the right mix moving forward. So the 2 objectives that we've targeted in this area are, number 1, focus engagement, communications on an action. So that means when you offer communications, there needs to be a reason for it. So you're providing this information for the end result that they're supposed to take A or B action. So the overarching priority for any communication should be, what does this require people to do? And there should be something, whether it's to click on a link or submit some input or share it. That should be the end goal of any outreach. Objective number 2, emphasize and invest more in digital. What we've recommended to support that objective is to develop a new look and a new editorial calendar for the newsletter with consistency and guidelines, and dedicate time and resources to focus on the website as well. And we've also recommended that the use of an app, whether it's something brand new or more likely kind of adopting and partnering with another municipality to kind of develop something as a bit of a partnership, would be a more effective way to explore what could often be a very expensive process. So those are the areas we've recommended to explore to enhance the digital opportunities that build on already strong website and a strong e-newsletter list going forward. So the next goal on the next slide, please, number 3, is to increase public confidence and trust in municipality. The shining goal above, and often what we find with municipalities, they get accused of a lack of openness and transparency. And it's difficult to counter that with, here's what we've done, here's proof. It can often just be kind of a sense of how people feel. So it's a little difficult to have clear goals to address. But here we feel we've recommended some objectives that will help you to present more of a positive, proactive brand story from the municipality and to support your service delivery and programs. So the first one there is a strong and inclusive brand. So by making sure that content and photos capture all the various communities within Meaford is important. Making sure that it's personalized for individuals so that they feel engaged and a part of it, that their voice and their presence is recognized as a key member of the municipality, and their insights are valued. The second one there is promote good news. Now more than ever, we can all use it. And there are great shining gems of stories that I heard through the interviews. So let's look to those opportunities to partner with the media that you have very good relationships with already. How can we tell that story? How can we share it? Who else can we tell? Is there non-traditional things like bloggers or mommy groups or things like that? Those kind of unsung members of the community that also have a voice and are listened to and trusted. So let's expand our definition of media and reach those. And then finally, number 3, strengthen reputation as a source. Let's develop some consistency on style. So how do you present yourself in communications? Do you use we? Do we use I? Positive tone? Is it active and friendly? So let's have a consistency that when people get something from you, they can tell by looking at it that it's Meaford, and they can tell by hearing the words that it is you. So that's developing that strong presence, that they know this is coming from a reputable, trusted source with strong guidelines and strategy behind it. And the final goal, if you could advance to the next slide, please, to provide greater awareness and understanding of the services. So this was kind of the first kind of key value that we chatted about, key part of the vision that Doug had run through there. At the end of the day, you provide programs and services. So let's provide greater awareness and understanding of those. So number one there, the objective to grow partnership opportunities. And in the strategy, we recommended that there be an official outreach plan of guidelines describing how often this should be done, how it should be done, so that there's more of a strategic and measurable effort for that kind of outreach. Often these things can be taken for granted and fall by the wayside. When you think about the whole Rogers versus Bell, Rogers doesn't send you any nice friendly thank yous until you're no longer a customer, and then they really want to get you back, but they don't try to keep you. So we're just recommending that outreach with partners be kind of formalized a bit, so that we don't lose the opportunities you've worked so hard to create so far. Number two is to maintain traditional communication. So there is a need for print going forward. There's no doubt. In fact, sometimes it can actually even make something more important because of the rarity now that print is treated as. So we're just recommending that those efforts be clearly articulated, so we don't go too far down a rabbit hole of investing in print when it's not needed. That includes things like print advertising as well. But to continue traditional outlets like media releases, which are done so well already, and not go too far down digital as well. So there's a little bit of a balancing act that needs to happen there, which can be supported by a strategy of what will and will not be printed. And finally, the last point there, establish a culture of communications. Very, very broad, friendly, rainbow in the sky language. What we mean here is that there is skills, knowledge, experience in communications, but they'll never know everything that the departments underneath them have. They won't have the value of the knowledge of people specializing in certain areas. So there's a need for them to draw on the expertise of department leaders and staff to get the information they need to communicate. So we've proposed a little bit of a partnering where we ask select individuals from the department to provide content to communications to support efforts overall, ensure that the burden of creating, developing, and disseminating messaging isn't always on the staff who might not know the proper nuancing. So a bit of a partnership there, as well as encouraging that there still be that yearly sit down, the value of face-to-face, and let's talk about each department's needs and what they need so that communications can plan and departments can plan moving forward. So those are the end of the main slides. If you want to advance to the final slide there, which is a little bit of a thank you. And I'll turn it over, I believe, to questions, Your Worship, if that's the next step.
That's the next step. Thank you very much, Stacey, and to you as well, Doug, for this presentation. As I've said, we've long anticipated this very, very comprehensive communication strategy and read it thoroughly. I know all of our council has read it thoroughly as well, and very grateful for the team that we have on staff and for you to providing additional support and suggestions going forward. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to council for questions. Councillor Kentner. And then Councillor Bell. You're muted, Councillor Kentner. You're muted.
Back now?
Yes, you're good now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, through your worship. Just a couple of points. You've, very carefully avoided what I thought was in your summary, a key finding, and that is that we need to train frontline and other key staff in customer service. And since customer service is going to come up in our budget deliberations shortly, I'd just like to underline that. And then very quickly, a question, if I may, and that is, how should we handle the pump storage file from a communication standpoint? Because there's a mountain of communications coming from TC Energy and zero from us. What would you recommend to us?
Certainly. In terms of customer service, I believe we've alluded to it in the training, so that training opportunities be provided so that staff can ensure that their commitment to customer service matches what's promised in communication. So that should be covered in there. Now, in terms of engagement, we've actually broken engagement into 2 areas. So how to engage when it's a municipal directed issue, and how to engage when it's not a municipal directed issue. So that's detailed in the strategy. I can kind of go through it if that's of interest right now for the team moving forward.
Please go ahead.
Okay, certainly. Let me just source through it here. Could we come back to that for Councillor Ross's while I just kind of
Sure.
drag out the fine
You know what,
print?
if you just give us the coordinates for that, that would be great. We'll go and look at it. I just feel that it's important. It's a burning question, I think, for those of us on council.
And that was something that was actually identified from Janet when we first delivered our draft as an omission. She said, you have an engagement strategy, but it's only from municipal perspective. How do we address it from a non? Which was unique because I don't think, Doug, we'd ever actually encountered that as a request.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it was some new exploration and some research that we very much appreciated the opportunity. So if you look at page 31, action item number 2 addresses how to engage on a municipal issue, particularly to support public. And then on page 33 is how to engage on a non-municipal issue, one that is owned by another, but that you have to address in some way. Otherwise, it's odd that you would be omitting any mention of it. So we've broken it into 2 fairly significant breakdowns of how to approach those issues. Does that help?
Thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, and we'll move on to Councillor Bell.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the letter M and to Stacey. You mentioned with all of your, your years of working in communications, I know that you are very aware of our municipality's aging municipality. We are older than the provincial average by quite a bit. And everyone, even in the elderly, the older age group, they're very much aware of computers and emailing and Facebook. They're very much aware of that, but we do have a sector that don't engage by the use of computer or seeking information like that. So with all of your years of experience, I think that we do have a sector of our municipal residents who may be falling between the cracks. And what would be, just in a nutshell, one of the best ways, and I'm just going to throw it out, that a lot of these folks like a hard copy mailed out, communication thing. You can say it's old school, you can say whatever you like along that. It's something that they look forward to. To them in their hands, it's very tangible, and they can sit back and read it. What would your recommendation be for the municipality? And if council has to make a financial commitment to doing something, what do you feel about what I just said? I look forward to your response.
Doug, did you want to start or you want me to go?
Sure. Yeah, I can go on this one. 100%, Councillor Bell, I agree with you. And we've done this in many communities where the exact sort of demographic picture looks the same, where there is an older than average and skewing older community. And a couple of things hold true. So exactly what you say is to judiciously but purposefully choose print materials and consider the audience. And that means larger type and greater contrast and following some accessibility guidelines that are in place for communicators. That holds true, as does working with traditional media, where the older community tends to still rely more than my kids, for example. But the third and a really effective tool, and I know this is in the strategy and Stacey mentioned it, is building really strong partnerships with the organizations in the community that already have the ear of those specific groups. And I can't say off the top what those are, but there may be a seniors association or various groups in the community where investing a little bit of time in building that network of communicators gives you an opportunity to tap their shoulder and know that you're getting directly into the audience that you're looking for, be it older adults, youth, what have you. And there's already that sort of trust basis that they have helped build. So we're really encouraging building those relationships in the community to help you get the word out.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Any further questions from Council? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Doug and Stacey. This report is incredibly comprehensive and very greatly appreciated. As the Mayor said, it's been long awaited, and we're really happy to have it before us today. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to say how pleased I was to see recognition and support for the Love It Here branding theme. We are really proud of that, and I was glad to see that you folks supported that. And I wanted to say how important I think this vision is, and I'm just going to reread it. We encourage collaboration, engagement, and the open exchange of ideas and information, placing community awareness at the core of building community trust. I just think that's a really powerful statement, and if we can accomplish that, we've mastered the art of communication. Going forward, I just want to suggest in relation to that it really relates to and solidifies the importance of my favorite line in our economic development strategy, which is communication and collaboration are the new leadership. So I think we're really on the right track. So my first question, I guess, is perhaps more for staff, but I'm just wondering if the implementation of this strategy, and Stacey suggested it would require time and resources, if that will require further investment or further staff persons, and I'm expecting this will be a 2023 budget implication, so we can hear about that. And I'll just give my second question while I have the floor. A little bit of a low-hanging fruit, I think, suggestion, and it was mentioned in the strategy several times, the importance of communication from this council, and recognizing that a lot of that does come through social media, particularly now with us meeting virtually and so on. So, and I know it's come up before in the thought perhaps that this council could be given some education maybe from members of our library who have the ability to do that. That would just help us be consistent and bringing that type of communication from council into the municipality and its residents. So I'll leave it there, and it looks like Rob might have a comment for us.
Rob, do you care to comment on that? You're muted.
My video off, but not muted. Mute. Yes, to your worship, with regard to next steps for us as staff, as with all other studies, we will be bringing a staff report that will speak to implementation, what we can do with existing resources, and then implementation, what additional resources will be required to do the other stuff. So that's really the next step for us, and we'll be bringing forward that to council in the future.
Thank you, Rob. Okay. And now over to you, Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Stacey and Doug. Obviously, you folks have done a great amount of research, and it's much appreciated. And I'm sure it's going to be very valuable to our staff and our municipality. I've been a little reluctant to bring this up because I'm hoping when it comes to communication, it's not too obsolete. But you mentioned a couple of times communication that is traditional, and I am an elderly resident of a municipality. But I can't help thinking that there was a gentleman who was born in Scotland, raised near Paris, Ontario, and as a young man moved to the United States. And in 1876, he invented the telephone. Now you talk about traditional communication, and I I know your strategy is computerized IT, super modern technology, but for a number of us folks, and I think I speak for a number, the telephone is still a very, very important means of communication. Where are we with simple telephone calls, telephone information? A lot of people appreciate that. Can you help me? Thank you.
I can take a first stab at it, Doug, if you can
Go
provide some
ahead,
insight.
Stacey.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. Pardon me. In terms of surveys, now we didn't probe this particular type of communication in the community survey. One of the questions is, what's the method you would prefer to be contacted by or whatnot? And we didn't specifically probe telephone, only because we've, as Doug mentioned, we've done this quite a few times in the past. And whenever communication by telephone or pre-recorded message over telephone is given as an option, it is the bottom of the selection. I don't know why it is, but for whatever reason, maybe it's the demographic answering the survey. There's almost a general loathing for phone communication. To receive information, to participate and give engagement, it's still an option. So people like to connect to another on a phone. They don't like to receive information pre-recorded or over a telephone like a survey when people call and do you have 5 minutes? So I think with any type of engagement, there needs to be an opportunity to cover, and I appreciate the struggle for municipalities having to do it all. There has to be an opportunity to do it online through social media. There has to be an opportunity to provide through an internet. There has to be opportunity to mail in their response. There has to be opportunity to attend a meeting and give their feedback. And there has to be opportunity to call in. So all of those often have to be provided as part of an engagement opportunity. So telephone continues to be there, but not as a means of giving information, only as a means of receiving information. Doug?
Yes, with a codicil, I agree with you there, Stacey. What I would say, and this circles right back to the very first part of this, the question discussion here, is the importance of customer service training, right? And properly understanding and even gauging that if Councillor Greenfield calls or checks in or even emails saying I have a question about something, please call me, that we honor that and that the staff have various means of communicating back. And oftentimes it's a default to just pound out an email and send it off because it's efficient and we have it in writing and, you know, all of those pieces. That's not necessarily a service focused mindset though. So if I were to call and have a conversation, better understand the nuance of the question as a staff member, say, or what have you, and then follow up in an email or a letter, well, I've kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone in terms of how people receive information. So where I support Stacey and where I think it's really important is that the telephone remain a very key tool in the process of communicating. It doesn't mean we're going to use it as that first dump or outreach of content. Unless, you know, these fancy gadgets, we have text messaging and you can get information on your phone that way. And I'm pretty sure that's embedded into the program. So that'll be part of the customer service pieces, the way I look at it.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm seeing no further hands. So I will thank you very much again for your presentation and for the work that you've done. And we'll move on in the agenda. Thanks again for joining us today.
Your Worship. Thank you, team.
Take care.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Moving on now, we have no deputations on agenda items that I'm aware of, and we have no public questions coming forward. So we'll move into council inquiries, please. Anyone on council with something for staff? Councillor Bartley, then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This council stuck their neck out last September when asked to go to court against the federal government. And we did, and we did get a windfall from the DND. And it was this council that was in charge of that. So I believe that this council should be dealing with and utilizing these monies and not setting it aside for another year. So my question would be to staff, can we in the near future, can you solicit some ideas from council, from staff members? And can we have a meeting in the near future how to utilize these monies? In the original queries, the transportation master plan was part of this. Now, I truly believe that the transportation master plan is a good document, but it is way out of our reach at this present time. So I would have to set that aside. But we should be getting ideas from the rest of council and staff. You know, do we go with a harbor plan, the Toboggan Hill, bridges, affordable housing? So my question would be to staff, can we come up with a meeting in the near future on how to deal with these monies?
Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, to your worship. So council has allocated some of those funds to specific projects that are proceeding. I think the
Correct.
question is that additional funds that are sitting in general reserves and what we want to do with it. More than glad to bring that forward. We've been thinking of it regularly when we consider different funding options for projects as well. So it's something that we can bring forward in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, thank you very much. And again, I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. And I wanted to speak today in council inquiries about the official plan survey. And I appreciate your comments during announcement in regards to that. So first of all, I just wanted to suggest that our Economic Development Advisory Committee had been working on survey questions for a significant period of time last fall, and we've been working with the consultants and so on, and we had questions just about ready to launch. And this was before Mr. Voigt was hired and took over the responsibility for the OP update process. With Rob's expertise in the area of public engagement is greatly appreciated, and it's really wonderful, and we're really lucky to have you, Rob. But I'm just wondering if he might like to speak to the relationship ongoing with the EDAC as we work through the process of the official plan update.
Over to you, Rob.
Through your worship, to Deputy Mayor and Council. Yeah, there's a number of things. As everyone can appreciate, the community consultation engagement process is quite complex. We have initiated the survey. Actually, I should clarify the questionnaire. We should remember that this is not a survey in terms of the statistical validity of it. I don't want to go into too many details of what all that means, but again, this is not a randomized approach to things. In fact, this is a way of getting broad perspective from the community members in terms of their values, their visions for the future of the community, what they see being important, not only for the way the community functions now, but more importantly, as stewards of the community now, how do we make it a great place for the future residents? That's what the official plan is about. It's the longer term goals. As part of that, I'm happy to say that we launched the survey. Friday was a week that the survey was up, so I think we're at 10 days now. And as of the beginning of this meeting, we have 256 responses. We've also outlined a series of workshops, and we're still working on the content of those. But we've gone well above and beyond what I've seen as typical in communities, and that we have 21 sessions lined up for a community consultation. I can say in my 27 years of working as a professional planner with about 17 on the municipal side, that having that much of that form of engagement is quite extraordinary. Those sessions, including the ones with economic development, a number of them are tied to the advisory committees that the town has, because that is an excellent venue for which the community citizens can channel their comments and have the committees refine them as policy recommendations moving forward. In addition to that, of course, we have all our various social media channels. We also are looking at doing displays at the library, so another method. In terms of some of the things that actually were just mentioned in the communications report and kind of best practices, I think I was quite pleased to hear some recommendations that we're also implementing. We have a team of students from Ryerson that are under the guidance of Dr. Samantha Biglieri, who's an expert on community participation, particularly when it comes to all aspects of accessibility. And those students are going to help us with a certain amount of outreach, including running the questionnaire with people that need assistance by telephone. So that was an interesting comment that I heard, and I was glad that we're doing that. And we're also have just posted a notice where we're seeking community connectors. And essentially, these are the people that have those broad connections to other fellow citizens. These are people that are kind, curious, and have connections. And if you are one of those, or would like to kind of nominate someone for that, there is that information on the webpage, the town's website, the webpage for the official plan update. And we're going to be working with those people as facilitators to have that meaningful dialogue moving forward. So all the input we've already received, including those questions that were previously framed by the Economic Development Advisory Committee, will be integrated into the longer term discussions. This initial kind of relaunch, if you will, of the project needed to be that higher level, broader perspective before making assumptions and dialing into let's say preferences based on those assumptions. We wanted to make sure that the conversation is broad and really gets people thinking about the long-term future of the community. And I'm happy to hear actually that people have been meeting with others, having conversations and discussing it amongst themselves. For citizens to work in community in that way is a phenomenal win for us. This should be something where we have that kind of engagement of the citizenry and then working in collaboration with them as staff and council. So very, I know it was a bit of a long-winded answer, but this is something that I know a lot of people have become quite interested in because of the importance of this project.
Thank you, Rob. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. And if I may continue, and thanks very much, Rob, for the very detailed answer. We appreciate that. And as everyone in council knows, we've been hearing from a number of residents with some comments and thoughts about the questionnaire that is now before us. And I'm just going to share some of those thoughts and ask Rob again to comment on them. I think the main one I'm hearing is that related to the suggestion that the survey can be completed in 20 minutes. And I think it's not possible. I know it took me over 3 hours and I was happy to invest that time, but I'm just wondering if you want to speak to that, Rob, as well as how NPG will quantify the responses, being as they are all kind of open-ended questions. And then just a couple of things related to the survey itself and the way it's formatted, in that only one person within a household can complete it. The document isn't printable, and wondering if any hard copies could be made available. And my last question, there isn't a question in the questionnaire about agriculture, and agriculture is just so important to this community. And I know it mentions rural and so on, but I just wondered, isn't an actual question on agriculture? So I'll back to you.
Through your worship to the Deputy Mayor, thank you for those questions. I'll respond to them in reverse order if I can remember them. So there actually is one specific question, and again, this is a higher level. There's plenty of opportunity for further discussion on all these things. And as you can imagine, and you've made the good point about, yes, it does take longer than 20 minutes. You know, maybe we can be accused of false advertising on that. But the fact that we have 256 respondents so far, and people are taking the effort and providing good quality comments, I think speaks for itself. We do have a question about agriculture that we're talking about it requiring the highest degree of protection. And then that there's various activities and innovation within that. And we're asking people to respond to that. We also have upcoming amongst that list of 21 sessions. And again, those are also going to be added to depending if there's specific issues that need to be addressed, where we'll be dealing with agricultural as well as rural issues. So again, people shouldn't be looking at this as their one and only chance to respond. I can understand that there might be some discomfort, if I can kind of stretch it that far, in what's being asked of citizens on this, because typically these kinds of surveys are purely just everything checkbox. And we have to remember that being part of a community, that community is a verb, not a noun. We need to be actively involved. And for us to work as professional planners and get meaningful insights, it's more than just selecting one of 5 things or 3 of 10 or what have you. The survey does have about half of the questions are in that format, but the others are asking things like, what do you foresee the future of the community being, or how would you improve the downtown? In terms of the one survey per household, that's an IP address technological thing. I think we can probably fix that. So that's a good thing to know. It's one of those technical things that you don't often think about, so that people can provide multiple ones. We can come up with something that, if it does help, if I use the word accessibility in its broadest sense, not just for persons with disabilities, but accessible to all citizenry, we'll figure out how to print it out or do like I said, we already have the program starting to be developed for the phone interview approach. So happy to address those kinds of things. It's all part of this having a meaningful dialogue and engaging with people as sort of co-creators of this thing, being led by the citizens. In terms of how we and the consultants analyze this information, well, there'll be, in simplest terms, a fair amount of sorting, grouping, and ranking of the information in terms of how often we hear things, what the terminology is, and those will be inputs into the further conversations and sessions we're having. But we need to remember that these conversations and this questionnaire, it's not a referendum. Any particular comment has value on its own merits if it's stated just once. It does not need to be stated 10 times or 100 times. And while we do get some indication of how top of mind things are, or how many people are interested in something if we hear it multiple times, each of these issues is addressed in terms of its own merit and its applicability on a whole list of different things that we can get into. And we'll have those discussions with the public if people are interested. More than happy to describe that.
Thank you, Rob. That's very helpful. Any further inquiries from council? Okay. Oh, one more, Shirley, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Your Worship. And first of all, I want to thank Director Voigt for his very comprehensive answers to my questions. That's appreciated. I did have a second question, if I may. I was just wondering about the sidewalk on Bayfield Street. I noticed the sign has gone up that the sidewalk is closed, and there is a lot of traffic on Bayfield, a lot of walkers and a lot of vehicles. And I just thought usually they close sidewalks if the sidewalk isn't wide enough for the snowplow, and I think this one would be. So I just wondered about the thinking behind closing that particular sidewalk.
Good afternoon. Through you, Mayor Klumpus, to Deputy Mayor. Great question. So these signs were introduced last year. It was our first foray into being transparent about not maintaining certain sidewalks because they don't meet certain requirements. So you're right. The reason that we aren't able to maintain that particular section is because it isn't a standard sidewalk. The size isn't able to fit, but also it's kind of like cobblestoney. It's just not, it's not an easy one to plow with a sidewalk plow. In fact, it's not really successful without kind of tearing up everything beside it. So we closed it last year for that reason, and it's closed again this year. So I understand that there is a lot of traffic on that side, but we also don't want people to slip and fall on an unmaintained surface either. So we're trying to find a balance between the two.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, I'll try again. Deputy Mayor, is that anything further?
Oh, Your Worship, thank you very much. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Then seeing no more further hands with council, we'll move on now to 8.1 on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. But we only have one item, so we will take this under consideration in its entirety. And this is Bylaw 2022-01, an election recount policy. And the recommendation reads, be it resolved that Bylaw 2022-01, being a bylaw to adopt an election recount policy, be taken as read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Kentner, Councillor Greenfield, thank you. And open it up for discussion, questions, comments from council. Seeing none, I will call a question. All in favor of this bylaw as presented, and that is carried. Moving on to 8.2, items for consideration. The first is the CAO 2022-01 is the pre-budget approval for new finger docks on Dock A. And the recommendation reads that Council and Municipality of Meaford provide pre-budget approval for 12 new finger docks on Dock A in the amount of $90,000. And 2, to authorize the Treasurer to transfer $15,097.73 from the Harbour Reserve for the supply and installation of these 12 new finger docks. And number 3, award the tender COR-PF-2022-03, supply and installation of these new finger docks to Kropf Industrial, Inc. for $105,097.73, including the municipality's non-refundable allocation of the HST. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Bartley and Deputy Mayor. Any comments, questions for staff on this recommendation? Okay. Seeing none, then I will call the question that we include from 1 to 3 and then authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into the necessary agreement. All those in favor? And that is carried. We have been sitting for an hour. Does anyone need a quick break before we move into Committee of the Whole and our budget? Yes, Councillor Bell. All right. Then shall we return at 2:10, 2:11? Please turn off your cameras. Okay, welcome back, everyone. And we will move into Committee of the Whole with a motion. Mover and a seconder, please, to move into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Bartley, Councillor Vickers, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. 213. And the first item up is discussing the 2022 draft budget. And Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you. You have a presentation to start us off.
Yes, Your Worship, thanks very much. Just a very brief where we are at right now presentation. It wasn't circulated prior to the agenda, but there has been some things that have come up since we did publish it. Just noting that what was circulated as part of the council agenda were the presentation slides that we were intending to take council through last Monday and Tuesday, but unfortunately, with all of the constraints due to COVID, those got postponed, and we'll be discussing any of the matters that council wants to bring forward today. So if I could just go to the next slide. This is a slide that you did see back on December 13th, where we started at with the base budget and those matters of the 1.5 being built in, with also some general capital funding. And really at that point in time, we were at 6.9%, 6.96% increase in the general tax levy as a starting point for us. Next slide. So following the December 13th meeting, there was some changes that did come forward that we as staff made to the budget, and things that did come forward. We increased our interest income because year over year, we are seeing an increase in that based on investments. Increases in revenue in transportation. There was some revenue numbers that weren't updated and based on applications that would be coming in. So those were adjusted. We did have some changes in the federal gas tax as it relates to specialized transit that will assist us in the 21,900. There was a duplication budgeting of community funding of 8,500. We also had a duplication of strategic initiatives expense. There was an item that was covered off in 2 different locations, so that was reduced 15,000. We also had not applied the utilities properly to the new library. Obviously, we've got a new library, and we didn't have based year in numbers for those, so we didn't properly apply that, so we had to make an adjustment. That was on the an increase in expenses. And then the last thing, the transportation services was able to look at about $6,000 decrease in expenses within their group. Overall, that resulted in that original number coming down 0.47%. Next slide, please. We've heard about the Ocif funding and how we received additional money there. This chart that currently is in front of you, how we would like to apply it. We did have our 2021 Ocif funding, which was to go to Gillies Bridge of 458,000. We had originally in the draft budget included this year's Ocif funding, which was going to be double of 458,000 again, but we now have it at 995. So as you will see in the proposal, we're suggesting that the 2 years as originally proposed of 2021 and 22 go towards it, plus an additional $206,000 be applied instead of taking on debt. What that results in is not so much savings for 2022, but for 2023 to 2025, it'd be a savings of $17,130 by interest payments that we will be saving. New to the program is you can use some funding for asset management planning, and we're suggesting that $80,000, which is the maximum you're allowed to utilize, would go to our staffing and asset management. A lot of times we get concerned about using those funds, one-time funds, for to offset operating. However, this is a 5-year program that we've been made aware of through Ocif, so it's gives us comfort in applying it to those. So that would result in a 0.52% decrease in the tax supported. In addition, the work order software program, which is a big part of our asset management planning and tracking, we're allowed to apply that. So it's another 0.16% decrease on the proposed budget. And then lastly, another debt deferral proposal is that we would apply it to 226 to the sewer component of the Cook Street rebuild proposed for this year. Again, that's going to be 2023 to 2025 interest savings of $18,730 going forward. So that's how we as staff are proposing we utilize the Ocif funding increase that we have received. Next slide. On Tuesday or Wednesday last week, we just were made aware of a outline of the proposed Itfd budget. That resulted in us discovering that we, in the 2021 budget, we made a bit of an error in that our 2021 budget included Meaford's costs if we were to proceed with dissolution of the ITF board and enter into a fee for service. Wherein the actual ITF budget that did get approved and not approved in our budget was 53,987 more on the operating side. So we became aware of that after the budget was approved, and we would just, we're going to propose that we deal with that in a variant situation. Our tabled budget that the council received, we had proposed a 4.7 increase over what we had budgeted in 2021. So again, we still had that $53,000 shortfall. The draft outline that we've received last week includes $205,000 for operating and $163,000 for capital. The ITF budget represents, from what they originally budgeted in 2021, is a decrease of $3,862 on the operating side and an increase in capital from what was budgeted of $113,000. We have updated our budget, so the numbers I'm going to give you on the next slide do include us including the additional $53,000 of operating for the ITFD. The capital budget, currently we have it as $50,000 because that's what it was, what we had budgeted the year before. And we'll be recommending that the ITF board, that some of the capital come from reserves to offset any further increases, but that discussion will have to be occurring at the board, which the meeting is scheduled for next week. So that's just a bit of an update on the ITFD. So over to the next slide and where we are at now. So as we have indicated, a 1% change in the total levy is about 153,000. If we take the original 6.96 and then the growth, which we've talked about applying, it reduces it by 1.36%. The changes we noted since December 13th is 1.15. We get an ITFD increase of 0.34. So that brings us in a proposed tax increase of 4.73. Since that meeting, we've heard that the county budget has dropped from 3.75 to 2.88, I believe, which leaves our estimated blended tax increase at 3.69%. So that's where we are currently as we head into the budget discussion. It does not include the enhancements, which will be dealt with individually. Just from a process point of view, we do have directors and all the managers like we originally planned for the meeting last Monday and Tuesday. If a question gets asked to a particular area, the director will attempt to take it. And if they need assistance from a manager who are the subject matter experts in those particular items, they'll defer to them to step in and answer those questions. So I will turn it back over to you, Your Worship, to turn it over to council to ask questions. And I guess the only other thing I will note, sorry, I forgot to note, is if a council member is interested in bringing to the table a proposed change, as usual, we would suggest that you put a motion forward to have that change tabled and the discussion and the decision made by council. If I'm incorrect, I'll have Matt definitely correct me on that one.
Okay. All right. So we'll begin then with the tax-supported draft budget, view 1. And how are we going to go about doing this here? Are there any questions for of staff? Okay, we'll start with Councillor Bartley and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Rob, you just give us the OCIF funding proposal. It's actually on page 117 of today's agenda. The $80,000 for asset management wages. So is that an ongoing thing? It's going to be on there forever, or so in 5 years, council is going to get hit with a 0.5% increase after 5 years of us paying for it with the OCIF?
Yeah, through your worship. So we know it's in place for 5 years. After that 5-year program, we anticipate OCIF funding to continue. Maybe the rules will change, we don't know, but in 5 years, we'll have to evaluate what other options are to fund it. But we know it's in place for 5 years.
But the asset management wages will be here forever.
Very likely. I totally anticipate it, that asset management planning will go on. It's actually two different positions, portions of positions. It's the asset manager plus the GIS coordinator, because there's a lot of the GIS work that goes into building those assets and also maintaining the asset database as we go forward.
Thank you.
I think just to add to Rob's comment, the ability for us to apply OCIF money to wages has existed for many years. We just never have as a municipality because we've dedicated all of the funds to capital projects. So I don't anticipate that even if the amount goes down in 5 years' time, they wouldn't remove the right to apply some of it to operating costs.
Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I had two questions and then a motion, so I'm not sure if you want it all at once, or anyway, I'll start with the
We'll start with the questions.
Yeah. And this one comes up every year, but just for Mr. Armstrong, do we know where we are yet with the surplus for 2021?
Through your worship, Val has been working diligently on trying to figure out, or not trying to figure out, but finalize those numbers. Got into a bit of a technical glitch the last minute, but we hope to have those numbers very shortly.
So that tells me that there will be a surplus.
We believe due to salary gapping in certain items that there will be a bit of a surplus.
Shall I give my second question, Your Worship?
Please go ahead.
And to Rob or Chris Collier, if he's with us. Or actually, no, this is a user pay question. I apologize, Your Worship. I'll come back to that.
Okay. Is there any further questions for the tax-supported draft budget? Councillor Bell, and then back to Councillor Bartley.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and on the opening remarks of this budget for our consideration in 2022, I have to tell you all that I am very pleased with the opening numbers. Even where it started, I knew that we could do some work to bring it down, but where we've just started with the presentation today, I think it's absolutely terrific that we're in that zone that we are actually at. And reading through the budget binder, I couldn't help but notice that there's been a terrific amount of money which has been put free for many projects out of reserves. And I was really glad to see that the reserve monies have been used to fund a lot of these projects. Also, I noted that there was a lot of grants that had been applied for and we were successful, and monies were able to be put towards projects. Also, it was noted many times financial support came from groups and individuals, which is just outstanding. So we've got a tremendous amount of money. And I think folks need to know this, that throughout this budget in section 3, we've got a lot of money that we've been putting towards, and we're going to plan to put towards bridges and culverts and roads. It's all laid out in section 3, and I'm very happy to see the amount of money that we're putting towards that. We're also putting money that's going to be involved in Cook Street and Collingwood, the water and the wastewater. That's all in section 3. And again, that's all, in my mind, it's all good. Now, the only area that I read through the budget and many of the sections where we found ourselves to be lacking was on the AODA compliance. It was mentioned quite a few times that we were deficient in some of these areas. And so when I saw some of the requests, and if we were being non-compliant, then I can support, we need to keep on top of that. And that was the only thing, as I read through all of the different reports, it came up very frequently, the AODA. But overall, as a starting point for where we're going today in the future, considering the enhancements, I'm really pleased at starting at the number that we are. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. And back to you, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess this would be to Jessica. Jessica, on page 261 of our agenda, our recycled material revenue is going up $120,000 over 2021 budget. Can you explain that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm pulling it up too, and I'm going to get Chris to jump in as well. Yes. So, oh yeah, Chris, do you want to field that one?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bartley. Our new contract incorporates us receiving 100% of the revenue for recycling material. That was not the case in the past. So, as such, we are on a monthly basis gaining anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 in revenue based on the market for that material. So. That answers your question?
Yes, it does. So they actually put the price up for picking the product up, but then we got a rebate on getting the direct paid for the product. Thank you.
Yeah, correct.
I will come back.
Okay. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. And my question is probably to Jessica here also, and it's page 55 of the capital deck of they aren't slides, but they're the what do you call it? Reasoning for having the capital projects. It has to do with bridge number 2. Mm-hmm. So in the document here, it says we're looking for $114,600 for professional services this year, and almost $1.5 million for the bridge replacement of next year. Are we sure we want to do a complete bridge replacement on this bridge at this time? And these professional services, will they be just putting together a design to replace the bridge, or will it be other options of maybe what else we could do in this situation?
Before Jess starts there, Madam Mayor, I wonder if I can just jump in and perhaps ask that Councillor Vickers holds that question. It would be great if we could deal with all of the operating stuff first and then come to the capital afterwards to avoid us jumping backwards and forwards.
Yep, sorry about that, Your Worship, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Matt. Sorry about that.
No worries. We'll hold that thought. Okay. Looking for any further questions on the tax-supported budget, Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I apologize, Matt. I don't have my questions broke down into operating and whatnot. So I have a page up here, page 323 on the Meaford Harbor Master Plan, is that operating or is that capital?
That would be capital. Capital is any of these big projects that we're going to build something, we're going to get engineering for anything. Operating is all the day-to-day things that are in the much larger file that looks quite different.
Okay, then I'll hold my question. Thank you.
Okay.
The other comment I was going to give Mayor Clumpus was that you've talked about tax supported, and the Deputy Mayor said we'd come back to user pay. I think if it's a user pay operating question, let's deal with all of those together, because we won't split out the capital into user pay or tax supported. We'll just do capital as a whole. And I think the Deputy Mayor said she had a motion, so if that's about operating, we could deal with it now.
Very good. Over to you, Deputy Mayor. Are you prepared for your motion?
Sure, if you'd like to do that first. We've heard from the folks of the Tom Thompson Trail Group, and I know they've been very fiscally conscious, and we used to have $6,000 in our budget for them, and then they said that they thought they could go down to 2,000, but I think now they've realized that they have a significant more amount of maintenance to do on the trail, and would like us to come back up to the $6,000. So just wanted to put that motion on the floor that we increase their budget from 2,000 to 6,000 back where it once was.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bartley. Is there any discussion on this as an enhancement? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I second it so we could get it on the table and talk about it. Deputy Mayor Keaveney, has this request come through you? Have they put this request into the Parks Department or the Transportation Department?
I'm going to punt that question over to Rob Armstrong. I think he's had more contact with the folks than I have.
Through your worship, can council recall that we had a presentation late last year from the Tom Thompson Trail Group, and their ask was part of that presentation they did to council to increase it from 2 to 6, and it was based on, from what I understand, increased some matters that they have to deal with based on some problems amongst the trail, things that need to be fixed. So it's bringing it back up, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, it's bringing it back up to the level. Basically, it's their ask, and it's up to council to consider whether you agree with increasing it back up to the 6.
Thank you. It wasn't in the budget package.
And I'm wondering, if I may, what the intent was here. Is this for specific projects in terms of maintaining the trail, or a specific issue going forward, grooming, for example, or some other project?
Through your worship, from what I recall from the presentation, it was specific projects like bridge replacements, some culvert replacements, and different. It wasn't general maintenance, which they tend to do themselves a lot in maintaining.
Right. Okay. All right. Did I see a hand, Colonel Councillor Vickers? Did you have a question?
Yeah, yes, I did, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
You asked the question before I got to it. I was trying to figure out. I was trying to remember from their presentation what they were going to use the money for, but it sounds like it was for more capital type projects.
Okay, so Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm sorry, could I just get the the numbers again, please, from X to Y that the Deputy Mayor is requesting?
If I may jump in, Your Worship, certainly, yeah. Councillor Greenfield. Yes, in years past, the budget amount for the Tom Thompson Trail Group was $6,000. And then they came to us last year or the year before, I can't remember which, and said they thought, you know, they were in pretty good shape and they could manage with 2,000. And I know as a council, we really appreciated that honesty. And but now they've realized that they do have some, as Mr. Armstrong explained, some capital work that needs done on the trail. So from their presentation, they have requested that council consider taking them back to the original 6,000 budgeted amount.
Okay. Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And is it possible, or is this an idea to defer this to the section where we do enhancements and enhance them all together? Is that possible, or do you want to deal with it now?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think it would be good to deal with this now, as it's just a change to the amount that's already existing in the operating budget. And we haven't got a report to go with it. So I think this is a small number that we can just sort of deal with it at this stage rather than come back to it if council can manage that.
All right. So if I may ask then, Mr. Smith, will you or somebody be taking account of if there's anything else that we needed to add into the operating budget in terms of dollars?
We absolutely will. That's why we do the motions like this, so that we've got a record of it, and we'll keep an eye on how much that is as we go along.
All right. Is there any further questions then with regard to this $4,000 increase in the budget? Seeing no further questions, I'll call the question. All in favor of this going forward into the budget? 2, 3, 4, that is carried. Okay, we're moving on. Is there anything else in the track supported budget that needs to come forward at this time? Then we'll move on to the user supported one. That's water and wastewater. Any comments, questions of staff for that? Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you. Yes, and looking at the request, and we know we're still trying to wrap our heads around the 8% increase for water and sewer, but it is suggested that these will not be the final figures. So I just wondered if Mr. Collier is with us, if he could speak to that, or if Mr. Armstrong wished to, because I know we did pass the request for the infrastructure fees for the vacant lots. So I just wonder if we have some idea at this point of where we may end up for the water sewer increases.
Yeah, I can.
Over Rob, to you.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to the Deputy Mayor. So there's two things at play that will affect the actual rates at the end of the day. One is new users. Obviously, we had a number of, with the growth we've had a number of new users. So obviously they help and share in the overall cost. So that will help reduce the 8% down. We are still refining who actually will be applicable to this. The original mapping received included a number of properties that would never receive building permits. So we didn't want to send someone a letter telling that they'd be subject to a charge when we knew they wouldn't be able to get permits. So we're just making sure that before that information goes out and we have that open house, that we know exactly the impacted properties. We hope that to go out very shortly, and we'll be working on that in the near future. So no, we don't have those refined numbers at this point in time.
When do you expect that to come forward, Rob?
I expect in the next couple of weeks, we will be sending out the letters. You know, there will be people that will come forward. Council hasn't finally approved it yet because we have to bring that final policy back after the consultation element. So it will be a couple of months before that comes back to council and applicable.
So how will this affect the 2022 budget then?
Good question. We'll have to review that and can speak back to council. I know the number of new users will be, but this infrastructure renewal fee probably won't impact it for 2022 because it won't be in place at the time.
So we're still looking at 8% for water and 8% for wastewater.
Your worship, as I mentioned, it will be reduced by new users, so it won't be that. It just won't be.
It'll be less than that.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Councillor,
we'll have the fees and charges bylaw, or the draft fees and charges bylaw, which includes the specific water rates, on the January 31st meeting. The revenues in the operating budget are simply revenues to balance out the costs. And so then we create those water rates by then dividing by the usage and so on. So anything you change today will have an impact on those water rates. But otherwise the fees will be with you in 2 weeks' time.
okay, thank you for that. Over to you, Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, through your worship. Could I ask Rob, could he give us his best guesstimate of, are we looking at maybe a 5% increase or a 6% increase, or are we looking at, 7.78?
Your worship, I believe that you'll be looking at over 7 for both. The reduction based on the number of users isn't as significant. Last year, probably very similar to last year, where we saw it start out at the 8 and we ended up with something a little less than that, but not significantly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. And looking at the budget, I noticed the operating expenses for the Leith water system has decreased probably about let's say $36,000. And I just wondered, is there an explanation why? It's good that they have decreased, but why has the operating expenses dropped by close to $36,000 for the Leith system?
Chris?
Yeah, I can answer that. Through your worship to Councillor Vickers, I believe in last year's budget, there were significant amounts for engineering and review of the overall system that's not in this year's budget. I think that's the difference.
They were kind of a one-year expense then, Chris? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah, it was a one-time engineering expense that has since been removed for 2022. There's similar expenses in the Meaford system or the Leith system based on whatever activities or engineering we're doing at the time. So that is what that would be from.
And the two systems are totally separate too. Am I correct? That the Leith system is charged to their system users, and the Meaford system is charged to the Meaford users.
Through your worship, that's correct, Councillor Vickers. They're separate budget GL codes and GL lines so that they are totally budgeted separately and funded separately.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, Councillor Kentner.
If I could ask another question of Chris, I'm just curious. We just don't see any relief on the horizon. Like every year, there's just all of these projects, all of them mandated, all of them critical. And I know we're going to have to move on the wastewater treatment expansion going forward. Is there any relief on the horizon in connection with the water scenario?
Through your worship, as far as obviously increase in costs for everything, we found even some of the projects we're doing currently, the costs for piping, electrical pumps has gone through the roof since the start of the project even. We do build in contingency funding to offset a lot of that. So the overall project still comes in within budget. But as far as moving forward, We do apply for various grants and funding through different government programs, which we have been successful over the years. So that offsets a fair bit of costing for those types of projects. But once again, we're heavily regulated by the Ministry of the Environment and are required to fulfill those requirements to provide safe, clean drinking water to all our residents.
Thank you, Chris. Rob, did you want to add to that?
The other thing I will note is that our user rates pay to operate and to replace the existing infrastructure. It's very important for us as we move into our updated development charges bylaw to ensure that any of new infrastructure that's required is paid for by growth. And in particular, that's going to be very big on the sewage plant. The sewage plant is not required for our existing users. It is almost fully required for all the new users that would be onto the system. So we need to ensure that our development charges are set up so that we are paying for it through that process versus our existing users. So I just wanted to highlight that, distinguishing between replacement of existing versus new.
Thanks, Rob. That's an important point. Councillor Vickers.
Through you, Your Worship. So again, to Chris, so if you take the operating expenses for the general and distribution, they've actually decreased by $3,000. So again, are these efficiencies, or are they just studies or engineering reports that maybe didn't get brought forward this year as compared to last year? And then you take the water treatment itself, has gone from 97,000 up to 106,000. So it's increased, close to $10,000. Can you just give us an idea where these expenses decreased and increased for the two different systems?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Vickers, once again, like to say the costs have gone up a little bit for different chemicals. Hydro goes up. Different utilities that we have to pay for to run our pumps and whatnot go up on an annual basis. Built into the operating budget, both Leith and Meaford for the water and wastewater do include some operating engineering funds and some projects that are one-offs for that specific year are often covered out in the operating budget that are maybe not there every year. They go up and down. That would be the increase and decrease again as we move through the budget process from year to year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on the it's on page 2. It has to do with lease payments that have gone up substantially. It's one of the bigger items that I see on the page here. Something in the neighborhood of $30,000. If someone could just say what we've had to do, that required us leasing, I take it it's got to be equipment.
That's through Your Worship. I think is that for the water budget, Councillor? Yeah. So what has happened is we have no longer rent the warehouse on Stewart Street, and we have moved to the Scott Clay Product facility. And as such, we are now in a lease agreement with them to rent the facility there. So.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I know it's kind of a confusing one. We had that report about it before, but a lot of it falls into that budget. So it shows up as a lease payment that wasn't there before.
Okay. Councillor Bell, anything further? All right. I don't believe we had a mover and a seconder on for the user supported. Do we need to do this individually? Matt, can you help out there?
No, Madam Mayor, we don't need motions for any of these.
For each one?
We need motions if anybody wants to make a change, and then we'll deal at the end with whether council's ready to move this forward to the public meeting.
All right. Do we need then to approve or, to agree? No,
No, we'll deal with all of that at the end.
at the end. Thank you. All right, then we'll move on to the draft capital budget. Are there any comments, questions? And Paul, you had a, yes, there you are.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I had my question there before to Jess. Do you need me to ask it again, or you?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, please, because I didn't write it down verbatim.
Okay, I just have to go back to the slides here. No, I'm in the wrong spot. I think it was page 59, Jess? Can you help me out, or?
I'm pretty sure it was, yeah. And it was regarding structure 2.
Yes. So for this year, we have a little over $100,000 in for professional fees. And I guess I'm looking to understand these professional fees. Will they be solely there to create a new structure or replace the structure that's there? Are they looking for alternatives? It's not page 59.
Is it 454? So through you, Madam Chair, it's a great question.
Sorry, Jess.
No, it's okay. There's a lot going on. So through you, Madam Chair, the question about structure 2. So the professional services that are in for this year are for engineer and design. So the OSIMs have identified that this structure is in the need for replacement now. That is what the amount identified is based on. So the OSIM will tell us what they think a like-for-like replacement is, which is the $1.2 million price tag. And then the $100 dollars for this year is to engineer it and design it. So the idea behind whether there's alternatives to construction, then yes, definitely. That is part of the engineering and designing process. They do generally look for a like-for-like replacement. But with that being said, given, and I think we've talked about it a lot, like the lower volume of traffic, et cetera, they will definitely be looking at alternatives for that structure. With that being said, it's always kept in mind that we're trying to design something for longevity, right? Something that might be lesser construction cost up front isn't always lesser in the maintenance standpoint long-term. So it's trying to strike that balance between what makes sense financially, but also does what it needs to do and can have a decent longevity. So hopefully that answers your question.
If I may, Your Worship.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I guess I have concerns, even spending the $114,000 for the engineering fees. Are we sure we want to replace this bridge? This bridge isn't a throughway. It's on a dead end road. By the looks of it, from what I understand, I wouldn't say I know a lot about it. I think it's a bridge to one house, is it not? And I guess I'm questioning, should we be looking at alternatives before we actually put an engineering money towards what the bridge would look like? If we know the approximate cost, I'm concerned that we're going to do this engineering report and then at the end say, come up with some other alternative to do this bridge. So these are some of my concerns with this expense here this year and next year.
So through you, Madam Chair, it's a great question. So we are working under the premise that we aren't looking to close structures in the municipality. So therefore, the OSIMS is identifying this as needing replacement, which is why it is in the budget for this coming year, which is why we're proceeding the way that we would. But with that being said, there was what Tori, before she went on maternity leave, actually brought a report to council about alternatives to keeping structures open, and one of them was structure 2. And it did identify options for potentially acquiring property, alternative arrangements to access the property, etc. I think that's a bigger conversation for maybe a different time, but we can definitely have it. It's just more along the lines of constructing an entrance of some sort to that property. We need to maintain access, but also whether or not it's remaining open. But as I've mentioned, our understanding is we're proceeding to continually maintain it as an open structure.
Just one more. Councillor Vickers, go ahead for your next question, and then Councillor Greenfield.
No, it's not the next question. So I would agree with you. I realize staff is kind of constricted to do the wishes of council, and council has said that all bridges will remain open. Yeah. So I understand the reason why you're having to do it. I guess as a councillor, I'm questioning, when we make these recommendations, they're a fairly blanket statement. And once you learn more about each and every situation, you sometimes question your decision that you've made in the past, sort of thing. So these, again, I don't know whether any of the other councillors are concerned about this, or whether I'm the lone soldier standing on this one, just questioning whether we should be going ahead on this one. And it does affect budget. So at 114,000, it just seems like a lot of money to be tossing at a study, at an engineering report that I guess I'm not comfortable in knowing whether I'm going to go forward on a go-forward basis.
And sorry, Rob, I know you want to say something through you, Madam Chair. Just quickly to answer your question before I forget, you had mentioned it was one property, so this has been asked a lot, but it's actually 2 properties and a trailhead. So just because you had asked, I wanted to make sure I gave you that information.
And a trailhead. So that means that the 19 vehicles would not be operational vehicles, but would be visitor vehicles. And the trailhead, is that what that means? No. Okay. Just clarification. Thank you. Rob, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, through your worship, and Jessica's highlighted very well that we're following council's direction in this regard. I would say that if in the future, before we get into the engineering, if council wants to send us in a different direction, it will come with, no matter where we go, it will come with costs. So I think for the purposes of the budget and council approving the engineering at this point, if we decide to go in a different direction, that money can be redirected if council directs us to do so. So I guess what I'm saying is, for the purpose of the budget, I think we should be keeping that in there no matter which way direction we end up going in the future on this particular bridge.
We can't be sidetracked on another motion. I hear you. Mm-hmm. Councillor Greenfield, you're next, and then Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're muted, Councillor Greenfield.
How's that? Is that?
That's better.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought I had pushed the button appropriately. Yeah, I want to thank Councillor Vickers for bringing forward his concerns. Yeah. I have the same concerns. I realize what council has in the past voted to do, keep all the bridges open, but here we have a structure that serves two residences. I'm in favor of keeping some sort of access across Telfer Creek there. I cannot vote for these kind of monies to go into that kind of a structure. It's, in spite of engineers' regulations, suggestions, in spite of provincial restrictions, we have got to figure out a way to service some of these rural bridges in a practical, economical, frugal manner. I just read a report a couple of days ago about a county in Ohio. Now, I know Ohio is not a part of Ontario, but they are using flatbed railway cars to replace small rural bridges with low traffic. Now that's getting way out of the box, but maybe it's time we got to start thinking about something like that, folks. We $1.5 million for this structure. If I lived on the west side of the bridge, I'd be saying, yeah, this is a municipal road allowance. I want that bridge. But as a municipal representative who serves over 11 million people, I don't know. I don't know. We're going to have this bridge, not rural, but municipal bridge discussion again. And the sooner the better. Right now, I can vote in favor of putting this money in the budget, but only on the condition that we gear down and, for heaven's sakes, do something practical here, not break the bank. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greenfield, and Councillor Bartley, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Matt, you can follow me. I do appreciate the comments, Councillor Vickers and Councillor Greenfield. Councillor Vickers, if your farm was on the other side of that bridge, I don't know if you would have a different thought process here. There is 2 farms. There is a road behind them farms that goes into Owen Sound, but it's not an open road. I would imagine it's going to be a lot of money to open them up. Yet, what if these people don't want to sell their farms to the municipality for $5 million? I don't really think we have a choice here. And it's not just replacing a deck with a railroad car. The major component of a bridge is the foundations. And if it's $1.3 million for a bridge, probably $1 million of it is for the foundations. So I don't know if we have a choice here. Do I like it? I don't like it. But I wouldn't want to be the 2 guys on the other side of that bridge.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Matt, did you have comments here?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just trying to think about ways that we can move this forward, because I think various councillors have said slightly different things, but all about whether or not we should be doing this. And obviously we have had a number of bridge conversations over the years. I don't think, and I might be contradicting Rob slightly here, I don't think we should leave this money in here assigned to this project if council doesn't want this engineering work to go through, because the nature of this means that once you've passed the budget, staff are directed to proceed with that project. So if Councillor Greenfield or Councillor Vickers don't think that's what should happen, then I would suggest a motion that says that this project be removed and that the money be directed to the Bridges Reserve so as to maintain that increased bridge funding that councils wanted to do as part of the 1%, 1% and 0.5% increases. Because if you just take this project away, then we're actually sort of not increasing the Bridges budget at all this year.
Thank you for that, Matt. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Matt, for that comment. And I think it probably will be Matt that will answer this. I believe that this council has said, and we had it before us, that when we ask for an engineering report on building a bridge, I think it's worded that all types of structure will be considered in the report, whatever that that means, whether it's poured in place or large span culvert or wooden structure. Can I have some clarity on that? I believe that's how this council has it listed.
So if I can answer that through you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Yes, we do. All types are considered for each, and it's always an individual basis too, because spans are different. Everything's different, but each time we do consider all aspects for sure.
Right. So then what was mentioned then, if I may, Madam Mayor, Mr. Armstrong was, if we leave the money in the budget this year to do a study, that study will come back to us I'm asking for clarity. It will
Yes.
come back from an engineering firm with recommendations how we can get across and what that would cost with different formats. So it might not end up being, 1.5 million in the next budget, but at least we will be able to see what those numbers would be with the current understanding. Am I right on that?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think the other thing that we might look at here is the period of replacement that is required. Where are we within the 1 to 5 year period? Jessica, maybe this is a question for you. Where are we for that bridge? Can we defer this decision until another year, or are we in the critical zone?
I have all of them pulled up but that one. Of course, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that it was a 3 to 5. We wouldn't be engineering something that would be, needing replacement immediately. So, here we go. Recommended remove and replacement is 1 to 5 years. So this was as of 2020. So we're kind of right smack dab in the middle.
Okay. So we're at about 2.5.
And keeping in mind that all of this is a process that
takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And trust me, I do not pretend to be an engineer or consultant, but I've been watching these SOTA reports on the bridges from 5 years ago, from 7 years ago, and they haven't changed. If a bridge said 2 to 5 years, 2 years later, when it's done again, it still says 2 to 5 years. I do not believe for a minute that this bridge is going to cave in the next year.
Right.
I've been at it several times. I've crossed it several times. But can we come up with, Jessica, some sort of price on what it would take to get the road from the back side of it open? It's several kilometers of unopened road allowance. Inside the bridge building, can we have a report on what it would cost to do that?
So through you, Madam Chair, and I don't know, Matt, maybe we're going to say the same thing. We did actually have a fairly, I don't want to say it wasn't exact, but we did have an estimate, I would say, for the construction of what that might look like, as well as the acquisition of what property might be required to do that as of last year. So we do have, albeit that was last year's pricing, things probably have changed, but we do have that information, which is fairly comparable to what the cost to reconstruct would be.
So I've actually got the numbers up in front of me. It was reports INF 2021-14 back in July of last year. For structure 2, the estimated total cost of procuring the properties was $955,000. The estimated cost of an extension of 28th Avenue East and Side Road 24, which is about 1,500 meters, was $900,000.
Double. Thank you for that. Councillor Bartley, sorry, did you have another?
Yes, I really appreciate that, Matt. I know the farms and the houses have doubled since that. Everybody's has doubled. So now we're talking $3 million to fix the road behind it, just so you just know. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, one extra piece of complexity as well to that is that it is a boundary road with Owen Sound. So it would require us to work together on that as well. I'm not saying it can't happen. We're lovely to work with, but I feel like it's just not as easy.
Might there be other properties that would affect in the future? Yeah. Councillor Vickers?
So, Your Worship, I would still like to bring a motion forward to pull this project from the 2022 budget.
Okay, and put the 114,600 into reserves. Is that what you're recommending? The motion?
Can I ask for clarification before I finish off with that last little bit of the motion there, Your Worship?
Certainly. Well, that is what is in the budget now, in the capital budget, 114,000.
Right. So if we don't spend that 114,000, is that still part of the 1%
Yes.
of the bridge?
That's what Rob was telling us, that makes up, goes into the 1% for bridges funding that we have committed to spend.
So our increase for 1% this year was around about 153,000, I think, from one of the slides earlier on today. So if you take off 114,000, then really you're only increasing the budget for bridges by 0.2%, 0.3%. So if you just delete this project, then you're decreasing the total taxpayer subsidized budget by 114,000, but you're also in effect eliminating that 1% increase for bridges. If you were to say that you're going to just not do this project but keep the money for future projects, then it would be a wash in terms of the budget's bottom line, but you'd be maintaining that 1% increase.
So after that help and thank you to staff, I will leave the 114,000 into the bridge reserve, but just like to see this project just paused here for this budget round anyway.
All right. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Greenfield? All right. Is there any further discussion on this motion going forward? Councillor Kentner?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to ask Rob or Jessica, we understand that it was on the basis that this bridge has to be replaced within 1 to 5 years, but it has very, very low traffic count. And I just wonder how it got prioritized over some of the other bridges that need replacing, which are also probably on a 1 to 5 year basis, but are more economically important to the municipality.
Who wants to tackle that, Jessica?
Sorry, I turned my opposite on the wrong way. So through you, Madam Chair. I guess the best way to describe it is we prioritize all the structures the same, and the review of the OSIMs and the importance and the amount of time that the replacement or any work for that matter needs to take place is all even. So this structure, given all of the things that we've talked about, less traffic, maybe not as important from a use standpoint, all of that is kind of considered when they do the OSIM reports and allot the amount of time for replacement, because traffic counts and all that stuff is part of the equation. So this is falling to be done now because all of the math that takes into consideration all of those things tell us that it needs to happen soon. And really, we're ticking them off the list as they come up. We aren't ignoring anything. Nothing's really being pushed off. Like, we're prioritizing appropriately as we move along based on all of those equations, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just further to that, then, so if we postpone doing the work on number 2 this year and next, does that set us back in any way in terms of the schedule for bridge replacements? Can we just kind of, if we punt this forward, does that mean there'll be a year then where we'll be doing more than one major bridge project, or would just everything get pushed back? How does the timeline work?
Through you, Madam Chair, it is tricky. So yes, we could fall into that situation where if we just push things off, we could be doing more than one thing at different times. We're trying really hard to always have one bridge in the engineering queue working its way through design, and one or maybe like one and a half that's being done at the same time, so that we're not stuck in years of 2 or 3 bridges at the same time. So if we're deciding for whatever reason to not do them, there is a really good chance that it will get stuck with a year where we have more than one structure.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Jessica, just wondering how then you might see things playing out. I mean, we know Bridges 21 and 22 are sitting now at the county level to determine ownership. So should that come back with a determination that yes, that construction is going to go forward, fingers crossed, that's what will happen. And I'm just wondering, you know, should that be the case and we postpone this one, then would that potentially put us into that situation where we could have 2 and 21 and 22 and perhaps even another bridge that was in the schedule all coming sort of due at once?
Through you, Madam Chair, I wish I knew what was going to happen with 21 and 22. It would be I wish that we had an answer on that one, and it's no one's fault. I don't think. I think everyone's doing the best they can to get the best information that they can and make the right decisions. I feel like that's always a potential. If those structures come up, we'll have to work with whoever ends up being the partner or whoever to make them fit into the schedule. But they were, I forget now how many years ago they were identified for the work to actually happen. Like, yeah, it's been a while. So that's a great example of how things, if they're pushed off for any length of time, it could end up being a bit of a lots at once, which is also difficult to, you know, design that many and project manage that many all at the same time as well. So that's another reason why we try to avoid it, is we want to make sure that we're dedicating our best effort to those structures. I don't know that I answered your question, but I feel like we're trying to avoid that, but it can always happen with anything. And I mean, we were meant to do Gillies last year as well, and now here we are talking about doing it this year. So anything can happen, but we always do our best to make sure that what needs to happen is being done within the time frame that it is, so that we avoid any sort of issue with those structures.
Thanks for that, Jess. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, through your worship. I guess I would just throw out that it appears to me that we have been doing a bridge every year, and we've been keeping tax increases moderate. So I think that, you know, we should probably stay the course. I just want to be satisfied that this bridge is really the most important one this year. If you say so, Jessica, then that's where my vote would go today.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My final comment, and I really do appreciate Councillor Vickers and Councillor Greenfield, and I feel the exact same way, but my final comment will be, at some point, we need to know what the alternatives could be and what those finances can look like. If we just put the money into reserve and it's sitting there and we don't move forward, some other day we're going to say, well, we need to know what it's going to cost with alternative ways, with the engineering coming back and saying, if you choose option, you know, it's only going to give you a 40-year life, or if you choose, you know, it'll give you an 80-year life. So we need to know what that number is, and by putting 1% towards bridges and an engineering report, I'm in favor of doing something with that 1%, and we need to know what the alternative monies look like on this structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And just further to that, yes, I'm always of the thinking that there has to be alternatives. Every single municipality has the same issues we do. There has to be somebody out there who's developing a more financially feasible alternative. But And the question's kind of been asked, Jessica, and I'm sorry it's going to put you on the spot a little bit, but if this council happened to say to you, okay, we're just not sure that we're comfortable doing number 2 this year, what bridge is next after number 2? Could they be flipped and do whichever one is next in line if it has a higher traffic count and is sitting in a similar 1 to 5 position? Is it possible to look at that? Which bridge is next in line?
That is a little bit on the spot, eh? Well, I guess my, through you, Madam Chair, my easy answer is that we have actually engineered or are in the process of engineering 2 structures currently, 41 and 45. We have put off the construction of 45 until next year in order to not have too many happening at the same time and based on where everything falls within timelines. So I guess my easy answer would be that we would go ahead with construction of that structure this coming year, as opposed to putting it off for another. But I do believe that this structure, truthfully, in looking at alternatives, because there are alternatives and we don't always have that luxury of having other ways to access properties, it is definitely more expensive to proceed with not constructing this bridge. So I feel like, in my opinion, it would be a good idea to move forward with at least looking at what design alternatives there are. But if we had to do a different one, I would say we would just bring 45 up as opposed to leaving it for another year.
Mhm. It has a larger ADT. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, as I understand it, bridge number 3, the Gillies Bridge, is still on, hopefully, for this year, if we can get the right tender, whatever that is. Hopefully, one less than we had a year ago. So when we're talking about one major bridge, that's a major bridge. And if we can do it this year, that'd be wonderful. I do have a concern about Bridge 41, but I'm wondering if we should deal with this motion that's on the floor. And I would like to ask questions about number 41, but there may be other questions about other items in this section that councillors would like to bring forward too. So I'm suggesting you call the question that Councillor Vickers and I have put forward, and then go on. This will indeed involve discussion for ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. And since a question has been asked to be called, I will do just that. All in favor of the motion that has been presented to remove that 114,600 and put it into reserve for future. Sorry, Councillor Bartley, you're shaking your head. I'm calling the question on that motion. All in favor? And those against? And that is lost. Did you have another comment, Councillor Bartley?
No, I apologize, Madam Mayor. You started your comment with remove the $114,000, and that's not what we were going to do. So I do apologize.
Okay, that was what the motion was, Councillor Bartley, was that we were going to defer this bridge, putting that 114,000 into reserve for, that's what I meant. If that wasn't clear, I apologize. All right, let's move on then to the consolidated capital budget. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 323 of today's agenda, we're going to spend 63,000, and I know it comes from reserve funds. And just so Councillor Bell understands, a lot of these reserve funds are for money that we didn't spend last year or put in from another budget. So we're going to spend $63,000 on the Meaford Harbor Master Plan, and I've read it, and I really understand what we're doing down there. And what I want to do is, are we going to have a conversation in the near future on what we're going to do with the harbor area? Because I'm really concerned. We have camping down there. Camping is very unique to the municipality, and I don't want to get rid of it. And I know the plans are too. So I would like to bring that up in future talks. But what I want to know is, what's this $63,000 for now?
So, Madam Mayor, through you, that $63,000 is money that was approved in the 2021 budget, and it's for a project that's already happening right now. It shows in the budget like that because that's part of the money that council approved last year, but we haven't paid it to anybody yet because the consultants are in the middle of the work that they're doing. So basically, they're 2/3 of the way through the project, and we still owe them 2/3 of the money that we'll pay them when they've finished. When they finish that project, which is design work in specific sections of the Harbour Master Plan, phase 6, phase 2, Rob's going to tell me the right ones in a moment. That design work will come back to council for council to then decide whether or not they want to spend money to actually implement that design in future.
But this is for construction, not for consultants.
No, this is for consulting. Right, it says
construction contractor.
It says construction/contracted, and the consultant is a contracted service.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Anything further on Deputy Mayor? Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Jessica, sorry. Question for you again. Fleet capital highlights. We talk about replacing the backhoe, that's fine. The replacement bucket truck, and you suggest 50 this year, 50 next. But you also suggest to maintain Unit 544-95 until maintenance costs are not justifiable. I just wondered if you could give us a little information on that particular vehicle and the reasoning for keeping a second forestry truck.
Through you, Madam Chair, and no problem. I love answering questions. So I'm going to ask Jeff to join me on this one because he's definitely more in the loop on the nitty gritty on the vehicles. But what I will say is the current, I think we talked about this last year, and I believe it was Councillor Greenfield said that he loved the truck, which I think everyone loves the truck, but the reach is an issue for us. So the main thought about replacement of the vehicle, albeit it is serving us well, we are limited in the reach of the boom. So is that a good start, Jeff? I'll let you take it from there.
Thanks, Jessica, and through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's a great start. The reason for keeping the old unit in service is to follow through with the banner replacements, post hole augering, because once we move to a full functioning forestry truck with a knuckle boom, it doesn't provide those options. We also use the existing truck for crane service for lifting pump parts out of our pump stations for the environmental services. And while the truck is still in decent shape, to contract these services out would cost much more than what we're effectively spending on it right now.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and this is probably to Rod. Page 347, Legion Park Master Plan implementation. I do realize it's not our money, it doesn't cost anything in the budget, but we've already paid Greenland Consulting to come up with a plan for that park. And we throw $100,000 out there like it's $1,000 now. Is it necessary for another $100,000 to be spent on consulting for such a small park?
Through your worship, It is, so this is more the detailed drawings for the park. Unfortunately, consulting is expensive. And this is also to address, we're talking about the bridges. We're looking for different option for bridges also to cross over the Big Head River to access into beautiful Joe Park. So it's going to be a little bit more involved than what it would be just for a regular detailed design.
Yeah. But you think it'll be $100,000 for a design for such a small park?
You know what, the regular design, I don't think it would be the $100,000. I just don't know what extra costs we're going to get into when we talk about the options for additional bridges for the group.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question for Jess, if I may. The Bayfield Street shoreline reconstruction, 300,000 coming out of reserve fund, that has been completed. Is that, can you give a little detail on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I might keep Rod here for that. Yes, it has, right, Rod?
So I'll take that over through your mayor, through your worship. So this is actually the next phase. This money here, we have completed phase 1 and 2. When we went to the consultants to do the design, we actually designed it from Fred Raper Park right over to the Meaford Museum. It was then divided into 5 separate units, and it was ranked in priority of highest priority to least. We were able to do with some additional funding last year, the highest priority area. So we've addressed it. So now we are looking to address the area from Fred Raper Park out to behind the little flower bed. It's hard to explain, by Jones's
Right.
Point. That's the next highest priority area. And I understand if anyone's been down around the water right now, they're going to see the water levels are down. They're down significantly actually right now, but I know we don't like spending money this time, but this is actually the best time to be fixing these retaining walls is right now.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for that. Anything further on the consolidated? Councillor Greenfield.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. If seeing that nobody else was jumping in, if I may go back to bridges, and I'm going to need Jessica's help on this one, Bridge 41. Jessica, am I reading the map correctly that this is the bridge immediately east of County Road 12? Have I got the right bridge? Did I? The map I have is quite small, and I think I'm reading it correctly. On Side Road 13, it would be.
Through you, Madam Chair. I get them confused a lot too, because they're so close to one another and we're designing them at the same time. So I don't want to misspeak. 41 is just over Mini Hill Creek. So it's on the 7th line.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's
at kind of the bend, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a small bridge. Okay, so I did read that wrong. Okay,
That's okay.
That's the clarification I needed, and I'll pass on my question because now I've got the location figured out. Thanks for your help.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Greenfield, because there's a couple of areas, and this was one of them that I wanted to ask if we can do this. About Bridge 41, it says that they're going to take out of reserves $58,000 and then the tax supported levy of $793,500 for a total of $851,000. And I am just asking the logistics, if instead of doing a tax supported, if we can do just long-term debt and what that does. If instead of having, right, there's a couple of them, that are like that, where there's tax supported and then there's some money coming from reserves. If we change it up, which ones we can put into long-term debt?
So Val will probably pop on and talk a little bit more about the debt, but anything that you change out of the tax into debt or into reserves just decreases the amount that you're funding for bridges. So if you were to move 500,000 or all of that 700,000 into debt, then you'd have reduced your bridges budget by $800,000, which would take you back down to where you were 5 years ago in terms of the amount of your bridges budget. And then debt always means that we're paying more in the long run.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions before we move on to our first enhancement request or suggestion? Seeing none, we will then move into the CAO and Records Management Coordinator. Budget enhancement is number 1. Open that up for comment, questions of staff. Valerie is with us. Welcome, Valerie. And Matt.
So this one fits within my department, but I think the report is fairly comprehensive, so I'll maybe just answer some questions of council rather than spend time going through it.
Right. Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, thank you. In the budget enhancements, the next slide, the ones involving staff, I'm just wondering if council would be interested in a general deferral of these until we meet again, and I just wonder if there's any interest in doing that, or if Matt would like to speak to how we might go about deferring these until our next meeting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we can defer anything that the council wishes to. What I will say is if you defer any of these right now, we cannot have the statutory public meeting on January the 31st because you won't have made decisions on your budget before we have to publish that for the publish all of the details for the public to come to that public meeting. So that will mean that the whole budget process would go back at least 2 more weeks. But beyond that, you would just need a motion to defer one of these. I should say, Madam Mayor, we do need movers and seconders for these ones as there's resolutions attached to them. And I'm sorry we didn't have one for this first.
Thank you. Yes, of course. Yes, my oversight. All right, let's do that right now. Then put, before we consider Deputy Mayor's comment, a mover and a seconder to put budget enhancement number 1 on the table, please. Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bartley, thank you. Okay, so we're at your comment, Deputy Mayor, if you wanted to pursue that, or we move on.
Yes, I think I would like to suggest that we defer the discussion on the new staff members.
Are you making a motion to that effect?
Yes, please.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
Sorry, before we do that, Madam Mayor, can I just clarify whether the Deputy Mayor, which of these enhancements we're talking about? Is it items C, D, E, F, and G?
Okay, so yes. And potentially H, because that would be connected to G.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if we're deferring all of those, my suggestion would just be that we move on and pass the last budget that says direct staff to bring the enhancements back on January the 31st. Because I think if we're going to take away 6 of the 8, then we may as well just deal with them all at the same time at a future meeting.
To go right to K, you mean?
That would be my recommendation, rather than sort of dipping in and out. If the vast majority of these that are the ones that probably affect the budget the most, we may as well deal with them all at once. But that, of course, relies on council wanting to defer any of these, and they may not.
So the enhancements to down to H, but we then have two that we could do. But you're suggesting that they be included in the deferral as well.
I would suggest that, and the reason I suggest that is because the reason for doing enhancements altogether is that then council knows what they're adding to the budget all at the same time. Because somebody may say yes to Georgian Trail winter grooming, but only if another one wasn't successful, or vice versa, for instance. And so what I don't want to do is then come back afterwards in 2 weeks' time and say, actually, we might want to change our mind about Georgian Trail grooming. I think the other thing that I will say is that, you know, all of these enhancements are there in full detail because we as staff, and Rob might want to pop on to say something along these lines, we strongly believe they're necessary. And so pushing the budget back 2 weeks, even if there is other things that may happen in those 2 weeks, probably doesn't do us any good, because these could be dealt with on their merits as to whether we need them. For instance, the enforcement officers and the facility attendants were part of the parking program that we talked about several weeks ago. The customer service clerk is an addition that we've talked about, and quite a few of these have no impact on the tax-paying budget at all.
Budget anyway, yeah.
CAO and records management coordinator is $6,000. The customer service is nothing in 2022, and so on.
Yeah, I can see your point here. Rob, did you want to say something at this point?
Yeah, I agree that we wouldn't have put these forward if we didn't believe they're necessary, no matter what, based on historic changes of service, based on COVID, and also based on our significant pressures that we're having, realizing that there's other things that may be required to be considered, but it is a difficult situation. The other problem with deferral is that as we continue deferring out, we're going to have to bring more reports and spending more staff time on getting pre-budget approval on certain things.
That's right.
We have advised the council. It is a difficult situation we're in, but I'll just leave it to council to decide whether they want to take the 2 weeks or proceed at this point.
Thank you for that, Rob. Over to you, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I do appreciate what Rob's saying is, and I do believe that most of these enhancements are necessary. My issue is how we're going to pay for it. Some of the ways that we're going to pay for it is basically deferring it to another council next year or the year after. I don't want to do that. I want to come up with the money now. I have a plan to come up with the money, and if approved, I would approve some of these now. But there could be more money coming towards this in the very near future. That I think we need to know that before we make the decision whether what we're doing here. But if anybody wants to hear my plan on how to pay for these, feel free. Let me tell you my plan. If not, I think they should be deferred till we find out where the money's coming from.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. You did second the Deputy Mayor's motion. I'm asking the question. Yes. Okay, I just missed that. All right, so the motion is on the floor. And Councillor Kentner, you had a comment?
Thank you, through your worship. I would really, I understand why you seconded it, Councillor Bartley. Could I ask the Deputy Mayor what her rationale is in deferring these? Because I'm certainly prepared to comment on all of them today.
Through your worship, if I may, to Councillor Kentner, and and I'm certainly not saying that I'm not in favor of these enhancements. I mean, I do want to discuss the Georgian Trail grooming, but other than that, the enhancements that have been put forward by staff, I do support. But I think back to Councillor Bartley's point, it's a matter of how they're going to be funded, and perhaps over the next couple of weeks, there may be some additional information that might help us with understanding how that could happen.
I think I would like to defer to, refer to our CIO with what possibly may come forward that we don't know about now in terms of revenue that you're speaking of. Rob?
Your worship, as usual, there's always considerations of potential staff realignment that could affect it. Unfortunately, we don't know what those are at this point in time.
Of course. There's only that one realignment there. Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I have two questions. The first one is if this discussion is deferred until the 31st, I'm assuming it will be loaded in with our council budget, our council agenda of the 31st. And I'm just wondering how extensive that agenda may already be. The second question is, we don't have a planning meeting on the 24th of January. Is there any chance of bumping these enhancements into the 24th for a meeting? Thank you. I guess through to Mr. Smith for that.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. I don't have the draft agenda for the 31st up in front of me right now, and I'm not connected into the network, but it's not overly heavy, but it has got more on it, more staff reports on it on other matters than this agenda did. We kind of deliberately kept this one fairly clear and moved a couple of things to the 31st so that we could concentrate on budget here. We can always call additional meetings of council if that's what council wanted to do on the 24th. We'd have to know sort of today and whether or not we'd have additional information within a week. I don't know.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm going to tell you where I think what we should do with this, and that might let us move forward on this. I really do not want to put the tax rate up from where it is at the 471 or where it is. I don't want to add to that. Would be up over 5. And I don't want to do what I'm about to say. I understand as much as anybody on this call what our 1 and our half do to the municipality. We're been doing it for several years. We're 5 years ahead of most municipalities. The rest of the municipalities are starting to do the 1% or 1.7. Some of them are at 1. We're at 2. We're at 2.5. So what I would be prepared to do is cut the roads 1% back, whatever it takes to come up with these enhancements. So if we have to cut the roads 1% back to 0.25 for this year, and hopefully next year we won't have 3 more staff added to our staffing levels. I'm hoping that is soon coming to an end. So we could go back to the 1% on roads. So it'd just cost the 1 year. So if we took the roads budget back to 0.5, let's say, I can tell you what we can cut out of the budget so that it doesn't affect that. And we'd have that money on an ongoing basis to cover these enhancements. If that's something that the council is prepared to do, or come up with another idea where this money's coming from, or we're just going to add to the tax rate, I would like to hear what council wants to do. We can, for a 1 year only, cut the roads budget back 0.5%, cut a few of the projects back, and pay for these enhancements, which I think are important. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bartley. If my fellow councillors recall, when we first started talking about budget, I said before Christmas and the New Year's period that I wanted my fellow councillors to consider where we're at with 1.1 and 0.5, and not knowing back then that we would be sitting at the percentage that we are. I'm interested in furthering Councillor Bartley's thoughts on reducing that at this point, but I need to be sure that the math adds up. what we're doing for the staff, because without getting into discussion on any particular enhancement of any personnel, I see merit in a couple of these for sure. So, Councillor Bartley, if have you calculated what that would be? Have you got that, where we would be if we did trim back down to 0.25 on the bridge?
Roads. I think that was
For the
roads.
road, yeah,
Councillor Bell.
okay, yeah.
Rob, before I go to Councillor Bartley, I'm just wondering if you have a comment at this point about the potential impact of this.
Yeah, Your Worship, and thanks for that. Before, obviously, this 1, 1, and 5, it is a council strategic priority that was established, and we've been following it for quite a few years. And I think it's very important to remind council of the slide. Actually, I include in the presentation that I did virtually a week or so ago on really where we're at, what our funding gap is, and how that we should really stay true to that in considering as we move forward. On the roads, we know that we're required annual funding to keep up with our roads is 4.3 million. Right now, when we add the 2022 funding, we're at 1.3, realizing we almost have a $3 million funding gap at this point in time. On the bridge, required at 3.1, we're currently funding 1.46. So we have a $1.7 million funding gap on the bridge side. And on the facility side, 925, we're currently funding or proposing to fund 469, which leaves a 455 gap. And I think the other very important thing is that those numbers are based on a set in time amount. They don't account for inflation. We know that inflation, especially recently, is significant. So those aren't even keeping up. The 1.5 isn't even keeping up with inflation. As we've moved to better asset management planning and updating that, will include inflationary amounts into it, so you can really understand what the funding gap is. So I think it's important to note that in considering the capital program. I think key to those reports going forward is that we believe that in future years, we've sort of allocated our growth to deal with the growth of staffing and what we need. And we're sort of suggesting for 2023 that we know growth is happening based on our building permit activity, and that it will just continue to be coming in at a pretty good rate, that we anticipate that will be able to cover off the future year aspects. When you just look at the budget implications of those jobs at this point in time, for this year, it's not significant, but in future years, yes, there will be an impact, and we're anticipating that the growth will help offset those requirements in that regard. Just wanted to say that. Just so we're not just speaking to the staffing implications, in particular realignment, we know that there's a special board meeting of the library this Wednesday. I think it's public knowledge that our CEO of the library has resigned, and the board is considering options, and there could be potential savings from those options. And that's really the element that to which we are council is waiting to hear as it may impact our budget going forward. We just don't want to imply that something's going on behind the door or something like that. So we just want to make sure that's clear, that that's what the issue is.
And the other issue too is if there is anything else within the enhancements that have been presented, for example, the Georgian Trail issue, if that could be come out, and that would then reduce the tax levy as well. So I think there are other things that to be considered in here as well. So we are the Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if I may ask a question, if I did the math right on enhancements from C to H, I added them up fairly quickly. I came up to a figure of $294,000. If that's not correct, I will be happy to be corrected. Matt, are you trying to add them up quickly or?
I know Rob's got a spreadsheet that I don't know if he's got open, but I haven't. I think that's about the right number, but nowhere near that amount is what's proposed to be funded from the increase in
tax
base.
That's right.
Quite a bit of it is from reserves or
Yeah,
other
46,
areas.
56.
Yeah.
So where, am I missing something then? Because I didn't know how else.
64.
Read this.
So in each of the reports under the budget section, there's an expenditures piece which says the cost of the enhancement, but then there's a funding section which is how the various different sources of money. So right now I'm looking at the CAO and Records Management Coordinator one, and it says expenditures, salary costs including pensions and benefits 71,820. Then in the same table, it says salary savings from the Legislative Services Assistant, 35,000. Salary savings from the Legislative Seasonal Post, 29,960. And then tax supported operating, 6,860. So for that one in particular, the impact on the tax budget, because those other positions are already existing, the impact on the tax budget for adding this position will be $6,860. So I think that's the important number here, not the total cost of all of these, because the wellbeing one, for instance, is exclusively from the policing reserve for 2022 and largely for future years as well. The customer service post, we're recommending that we pay for it from reserves this year and from growth next year, because we know that we'll have a significant amount of growth of tax revenue in 2023. So it's important to look at what we're talking about for increase rather than necessarily the total cost.
Yeah,
And I would agree with you. I would agree with you completely.
Yeah, there is a spreadsheet. Unfortunately, I don't have access to it right now. I'm not on VPN, but I would ask, I did share with Val and she does have it. I'd ask her to come up and speak to just what the figure is with all those in, and then we could identify that.
If I just did a fast add as well, and if we go from the records management down to the enforcement vehicle, that is a total of $72,925.
So the whole amount of the operating and the enhancements are $230,935. That's the total cost of them. From taxation, it's $110,735.
Right.
And then there are some that are going to be funded from reserves. And there is one that's funded from existing taxation already, because that's a
That's the records
position
management.
switch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I can ask the question, from C to H, what will be the tax supporting cost of those enhancements altogether?
So that's just the employment people, including the vehicle.
Yes.
Is $72,925.
$925. That's what I said.
Yeah.
You're right again, Your Worship.
Thank you for acknowledging that. Of which there's still funds coming out from reserve funds too, right? Yeah. Okay, any further discussion on this? We do have a motion on the floor to, first of all, the Deputy Mayor's motion, seconded by Councillor Bartley, was to defer the enhancements or items 9C to H. And if we took that out, and then that is the motion that is on the floor. The clerk has suggested that the whole thing then be deferred in its entirety. But that is not the motion on the floor. The motion on the floor is from C to H. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, if I can speak to the motion on the floor. We're already sitting with 21 Trowbridge Street closed, with playing catch up on so many fronts. And we're going to hamstring staff, and we talk about being kind to staff. we're going to hamstring them by postponing the necessary measures that they want to take to fix the problems that we have going forward. I don't see the merit in delaying the discussion of these enhancements.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I seconded the motion to get it on the floor. We could discuss it because I don't know how we're going to pay for these. So I can go ahead with these enhancements today. But before we go ahead, we need to come up with, are we adding to the tax base? Are we doing my creative little plan? Or are we waiting for something magical to happen? So the reason I seconded is to get it on the floor.
I hear you. Thank you for that. And Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, just to answer Councillor Bartley's point of view, if there is a proposal in each and every one of these documents about how to fund these, each and every enhancement, you can only talk about how to fund each enhancement if you're actually discussing the enhancements. And as you're discussing those enhancements, there's two questions. One is, do you want to approve them? The other is, do you want to approve them in the current format that they are with the current funding plan? So if you thought that you didn't want to fund, say, the Records Management Coordinator by other staff savings and 7,000 additional tax money, you could add into that motion how that $7,000 should be funded instead. But you can only do that when you're actually talking about the enhancements themselves.
So the Deputy Mayor?
Thanks, Your Worship. And again, I'm certainly in favor of all these positions. And I think it was Councillor Greenfield that made a suggestion that we have a short meeting on the 24th, that we may have additional information, as Mr. Armstrong suggested, by that point in time. And that's just a week. So I don't know if there's an ability to amend the motion to suggest a short meeting on the 24th. That could solve the issues of how we're going to fund these enhancements.
I can barely hear you, Deputy Mayor. I'm sorry. I don't know if anybody else is having difficulty. Maybe it's mine. So you're suggesting that we look at the January 24th meeting week today?
Yes.
Matt, do you have a comment on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as I said earlier, we can have extra meetings if that's what councils desire, because we would just take these items as they are and move them straight to a new agenda. What I will say is that, and Rob's mentioned, the Library Board's consideration of other options. I can't promise anybody that there will be any additional information within a week, because the Library Board may say that they want to think about things for a month or longer than that. So, and this is just my personal opinion, this is obviously council's decision. My opinion is that council should deal with these on the merits of each individual case, and then if there are savings from the Library Board proposal that's being considered, then that's a bonus that will reduce the tax bill when you know that.
I agree. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, I am going to call the question on the motion before us, which is to defer the enhancements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's C to H. And I will call the question. All in favor of deferring it? And actually, if it's deferred, you need to put a date. You should have a date on that you want to defer it to.
So I think the deferral was to January the 24th.
January 24th. Okay. So that is the motion on the floor to defer until January 24th. Enhancements C to H. All those in favor? And against? And that is lost. All right, so now we're going back into discussing each one as it appears. And we're on to budget enhancement as 01, CAO and records management coordinator. Can I have a mover and I guess a mover and a seconder to put that on the table? Councillor Ross, Kentner, and Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Any questions, comments on this one? Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I don't think that we can tell Rob, as we did in his performance review, that he needs to get some help to broaden the scope of the CAO's office so that he isn't doing everything, and then not budget for it. And I feel that he has come up with a plan here which utilizes existing staff and keeps costs very reasonable. $6,860 for the current tax year and $17,000 per year going forward. And that would give him an assistant and records management coordinator. And this, as I understand it, is somebody operating at a fairly high level and who would be able to be utilized during vacations and so forth to relieve other staff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anything further? Seeing none, I will call a question. All in favor of this budget enhancement as presented? And that is carried. Budget enhancement number 2 is the customer service clerk. They need a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Kentner. Any comments on this one? Customer service budget enhancement, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I very much support us going forward and hiring a customer service clerk. It is stated in the report this role will require extensive training, and I certainly understand that. And I also read the CAO and records management coordinator will fill in for this position during lunch and so on and so forth. So I'm just wondering that CAO and records management coordinator then will receive the same training as the customer service clerk?
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly important that we have multiple people able to deal with things in the same manner. There's nothing worse as a customer than getting different service one week to the next because somebody's on vacation. So we will be putting both of those employees through a training program that we're currently developing, and that will include going out and learning from all of the departments so that these staff have an understanding about what we do. Part of this project as well is developing a much more comprehensive customer service strategy and defining some expectation levels. The aim is that rather than having people call in or walk in the front door and being handed a business card, that these folks will be able to answer 75 to 80% of questions, therefore making it much more of a one-stop shop for people coming in to the administration office. That of course is helped by the fact that we'll have a new planning and building customer service area within the old library once we've made those updates and moved staff over into that building as well.
Thank you, Matt. All right, I'll call Councillor Bell and then Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This one is, when I was looking at the enhancements, I have to tell my fellow councillors and those that are listening, I think that having a person at the front who's going to be called the customer service person is probably the best thing that I have heard in a long time. I've received so many comments, and I'm sure other councillors have heard the same thing about when they go down to the office, who do they talk to? Who have they been meeting? Where do they get sent? Who are they supposed to see next? This person, to my mind, and the way I've just been listening, this person is going to be schooled and with a good degree of knowledge as to the total working and 70% of the knowledge as to where to go and how to make something get started to go. All we're doing is doing a fantastic thing of doing better customer service with the ratepayers who come in with questions. And I can fully support this person at the front end. They're really going to have to be something special too. I'm sure they're going to take a lot of brunt questions and they're going to meet some pretty stiff attitude. I know they will, but having a person there that we can promote and say, this is your contact, I see this as a real positive thing. So I can vote yes for this one.
Well said, Councillor Bell. Councillor Kentner? You're muted.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add to Councillor Bell's comments that the communication study, which we just took delivery of earlier this afternoon at a considerable cost, I think it was about $15,000, stressed that we have a problem with customer service in the municipality, and we need to inculcate customer service attitudes. Very important for any business and or any municipality. And the thing is, the cost is nil until 2024. And this gives us 2 free years. If the council of the day in 2024 or 5 feels that this is not being productive, all they have to do is discontinue it. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just on that cost element, I should add to Councillor Kentner's comment that in 2024, this won't be an addition to the tax base, because it will already be included in the tax base because of that growth in payment in 2023. So although it obviously is an additional cost to the overall budget, it will never come across as a increase that means a tax increase for it.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I do agree with this enhancement. I don't know where you're going to find a person that's going to know everything about the municipality. I just don't know where, if that person's out there. And I kind of question your thought that that person will answer all the questions. I do believe they're going to have to ask for other people in the office to answer some of them, but I'm not going to tell you how to run your job. And then I was going to add to it, Matt, that if you're going to take the money out of assessment growth, that goes from, once you've done it once, it goes from year to year to year. You don't have to add it in the next 3 years after that. You've already answered that. Just so you know, you are cutting into the money that you would use next year to lower your tax rate, like we've done for the last several. But I'm all for this one. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of this budget enhancement for customer service clerk, and that is carried. And E is the budget enhancement. Number 3 is the well-being program. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Vickers. Thank you. Comments or questions on this one? Councillor Bartley, and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Each and every one of us received an email last night about 10:30. I hope everybody read it. The email is exactly the way I think. Almost thought I wrote it myself. It mirrors my thoughts. I want to know what council's plan is going forward. Are we going to hire our own medical health people, the mental health people? Just so you know, in Grey County, Grey Bruce counties, there's 180 employees with CAMH to help with mental health, mental issues with people. But are we going to hire our own? Are we going to increase our police force? I don't understand why we aren't following the county's plan, which has the same questions in it as ours does. Respect to the plan that has been put forward so far. Council asked staff to do it. Staff hit a home run, did a great job, but just we're talking $500,000 now. I don't think that's the end of it. I believe that'll double. And I don't know why council is sticking to a plan and we're the only ones in Grey Bruce counties doing our own. I would like some comment if you'd like, but I just don't think we should go forward on our own on this. Thank you.
Okay, Rob, over to you, please.
Yeah, and with the details of our plan, I'll let Matt probably speak a little more to those details, but I just wanted to share before you got into it. When I read that I'm going to recall a discussion that I had with the Grey County CIOs back a couple just before Christmas with regard to that overarching plan between Grey and Bruce counties. And the question the CIOs were asking is, now what? We developed this plan, and does that plan now, and we checked that box because the province required us to do this community well-being plan. But now what are we doing from an implementation point of view? And I was sitting there very pleased that we did our own plan and have developed our implementation strategies and are going to be moving forward with it based on those things. I will say, overarching, none of our implementation elements are going to be getting into services that are provided elsewhere. It's more about implementing what we can do, plus working with other organizations, other groups, to ensure that our community is looked after in those regards. I don't know if you want to expand on that, Matt. Or...
Well, thanks, Rob. I'm sorry if I'm looking sideways. I have the plan open on a different screen, and I'm looking at the action items that this council approved 6 months ago. There were 30 of them. We've currently done some work on 2 or 3 of them, and we've got a 4 or 5 year plan to do things on the other. And under the poverty and income section, I'm looking at things that talk about enhancing walk-in services within the municipality and expanding local offerings of parent, family, caregiver support, classes, healthy baby programs, and so on. So no, we wouldn't be hiring mental health professionals, but we may well be partnering with CMHA to say, can you come and run a program in the municipality every week, and we will pay for the location, or we'll pay for part of the cost that you incur to do that. The idea of this is about partnerships, is about bringing some of those services locally, because one of the stats in here was that 52.5% of the people that responded to our survey wanted more mental health and addiction programs and supports locally. And I think locally is the key word here. So many of these services aren't happening in Meaford, they're happening in other locations, whether it be Hanover or Owen Sound and so on. So that's what I think that we're doing here is taking funds to actually implement the 30 action items that council's approved and the community asked for through the plan development process, and we can only do that if we have some money. We don't have to do that. It can be something that we put on the shelf and never look at again, but without money, that's what will happen, because we can't do it on the side of the desk for some of these big things.
Thank you for that, Matt. And I'm going to jump in, if I may, because I believed very strongly in this program going our own route. For the very simple reason, because I saw this as an opportunity for us as a council and staff to have a really good, solid look at the social determinants of health and well-being in our community. To do this on a broad basis through a massive study, which was done in combination with Grey and Bruce counties. The participation rate in reaching the individual participants, of course, it was thwarted by COVID at the very beginning when we began to have the engagement sessions that were planned with groups and individuals, and a really in-depth individual consultation and engagement. The fact of the matter is that the Grey Bruce study had the same deterrence, I guess, for their public engagements as well. But it's interesting to note that the Grey Bruce plan had a response rate from the public across the gamut of both populations in both Grey and Bruce of 1.19%. The Municipality of Meaford had a public engagement rate of 4.09% for our population. This meant that we were able to connect with a lot of our residents individually through the survey. Just as further information on that, there were 450 responses on that survey with regard to the community well-being plan. That too was better than our communication strategy. So this plan was really, this whole process seemed to be important to our residents to understand what they're going through, what social factors impact their lives. We wouldn't have had that kind of a response had we been part of the broad Grey Bruce plan. There wasn't one community within that plan, because Meaford was excluded, that had more than 250 respondents, and that very likely came from Owen Sound. So from my perspective, this was a very good grounding of a look at what the plan was developed as a look at what the social determinants of health and well-being are specific to our residents. And so to me, it was very important that we move forward individually, as opposed to being part where we would have been lost in a population base of 149,000 between Grey and Bruce counties. And Councillor Kentner, you had a comment.
I do. Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I want to thank Catherine Haggart for engaging us and with a very thoughtful analysis, really, of the two options. And I just would like to explain to her and everyone the reason I support our independent approach. And it's simply that we've already bought and paid for the layered regional system of government-run health and social services and nonprofit and volunteer organizations that take care of it. And both our safety and well-being report and the Grey Bruce report have identified that despite all best efforts, people are falling through the cracks in this system. With all the money that we've invested in the regional approach and major gaps reflected in both reports, what kind of confidence can we have that the same approach is going to give us a different outcome? Our report identifies gaps in the Municipality of Meaford, and we're going to be taking practical steps to close those gaps while people are setting up work tables in the regional approach. So I honestly feel we've done the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kentner, and Councillor Greenfield, and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the fact that our municipality did go ahead by itself, I think it speaks very well of our municipality. We can certainly take some advantage of the Grey Bruce plan, items that are in there, ideas that are in there. I don't think we're going to be isolated from doing that. But I'm really glad that we did do this on our own. I do have a question, though. I guess through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Smith. We have some budget items this year, enhancements down at the skateboard park, and other. I mean, we've got sidewalk repairs and rebuilds. We have groups like the After 55 Club come to us and want rentals waived on occasion. Other groups too. Could items like that, like those, be built into the community well-being plan, and I guess also into their budget? Now, I know that most of those are capital items, but could there be an incorporation there for some of these enhancements that help out seniors, help out the young people, and so on and so forth, such as our plan suggests?
Thanks, Councillor Greenfield. I think that there's lots of things the municipality already does that contributes to well-being. Having parks in general contributes to community well-being because there's places for people to go and the opportunity to enjoy the outdoors. Having facilities where groups like the 55 Plus Club or the Rotary and so on can meet all contributes to community well-being, and they're key partners for us. But all the things that you've just referenced are things that we're already doing and we're already paying for. The wellbeing plan talks about the next step. It talks about what we can do to build on that. One of the action items in the plan is to enhance senior programming. So rather than just saying, okay, we'll take the $5,000 that we give to 55 Plus Club out of the community funding budget and put it in the wellbeing budget, let's say we'll spend another $5,000 to make the seniors programming better by adding to it and doing things in partnership with the 55 Plus Club, or doing things ourselves as well, because not everybody wants to be the member of a club like that. So I think we can do anything. We can certainly call anything wellbeing. We can assign monies to certain budgets, but I think just moving money from somewhere else to this budget to try and save money elsewhere sort of defeats the purpose.
Thank you for that, Matt. And we have Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you everyone on this. So to Matt, up front, I'm going to support the fact that we're going to do this ourselves. Speaking as former chair of the Police Advisory Committee, I think just about at every one of those meetings, the issues of what we in our municipality have with our residents, 100%, we're going to address the issues that are ours, and we're going to find ways to make this municipality better. And my question to Matt is on the budget lines where we've got 50% being requested for the wages and 50% of the request for the support of that. And I would like to suggest that on the supporting of the person, which is listed, the numbers listed, that I want to look at this in the aspect what this council did a year or so ago when we were talking about buying a backhoe. We supported the idea of buying the backhoe, but we said not the full amount this year. This one, I would like to suggest that we get the person in place and that the number that is suggested in the budget enhancement, that we only do half. And Matt, I look forward to your comments on that one. But I would like to consider that because it is a territory where we don't really know. So getting some money in place is my thoughts on it, and supporting the person being hired, I support that.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Through you, Madam Mayor. You won't be surprised to know, Councillor Bell, that I disagree. I think that we put this amount of money in there because that's what we think we need. We've been talking about 100,000 a year for about the last 3 years since we very first started talking about this project, and it's because we could hire somebody absolutely to help, and we're talking about 50% of a person, and that the other 50% will be from existing legislative work as well. But if we don't have any funds to do anything, then that person's really going to struggle for the next 12 months. We're allocated in the enhancement report. I've put in $10,000 for communications because that might be a mail out to all of the population, which if we want to send a mail direct to households rather than through flyers, then that costs around $5,000 to do that once. We want to do some advertising because one of the things that became very, very clear as the plan was developed was that people don't know about the services that are currently available. So if we don't spend any money to actually produce anything to tell people, then we don't get anywhere with that either. When we talk about implementation and equipment costs, it might be those facility rentals. It might be one of the action items is to develop a wellbeing conference every year. So we would have to actually hire Mayford Hall and pay for catering and invite speakers and so on. So you can't do any of those sorts of things without money. But what I will say is that because all of this for 2022 is scheduled to come from reserves, this is money that we've had in the policing reserve for many years now, because it was from back in the days when there was no standard funding formula for policing. So it was the oh dear, we've got a big bill kind of backstop, which we don't need anymore because we get an annual bill well in advance of budget time. Because it's all scheduled to come from reserves this year, we'll only take out of reserves what's actually being spent. So while it'd be a maximum of $65,000 this year, if we don't get anybody till April and we only need to spend $15,000 instead of $30,000 on activities, then we'll only take $15,000 out of reserves because we want to save the rest of it for future years. Obviously, if we do that, then that helps us in future years, as then the reserve contribution can be perhaps more, and the tax supported operating increase can be a little less. We've designed this in such a way that it adds to the budget every year after 2022, but in small increments, so that it's not hitting the budget in a big, we need a 0.7% increase this year just to cover this funding. So I think it's really important that we keep $65,000 in there as a maximum spend for the year, because it will enable us to actually do something.
Yeah. Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you, and I will try to be quick. I just wanted to remind the public, first of all, that we're so proud of this plan because it was done in-house. We didn't have to hire a consultant, and our report is incredibly professional. I think one of the advantages and reasons for having our own plan is the fact that a lot of the services that exist at the county and level, people need transportation to get there, and many people don't have that opportunity to travel to Owen Sound and so on. So it's important to meet them where they are. And I think too, our local support organizations are probably familiar with a lot of the people who do have lived experience and who need help and supports, and having those relationships here locally is a strong advantage over folks having to potentially find a way to Owen Sound to meet someone that they don't know. So I think that's important, and we know that we'll have services through our hospital and our outreach and programming at the library, I imagine, and so on. And I'd just like to suggest probably to you, Matt, that perhaps as initiatives are developed, if there is a need for further funding, that there are, service clubs in the community who are very, very concerned about mental health of our residents and their well-being, and perhaps there's an opportunity to approach them if further funding is needed at some point in time.
Absolutely, Deputy Mayor. I think one of the key parts of this role is developing relationships with those potential partners or existing partners. One of the jobs here is to apply for grants. One of the things the province said was that you wouldn't be eligible for any policing-related grants if you didn't have a wellbeing plan. We have a wellbeing plan. That means we can apply for things once we've got a something that we want to do. Margaret's just sent me a quick message to remind me that she sat in on the last county advisory committee meeting a couple of months ago in December last month. And what they did then, they were forming terms of reference and what should we do at the local level conversation, because the Grey Bruce plan has no action items. We have 30 action items right now that we can start, and so we can start making a difference. And so absolutely working with those partners to try and make some of that happen. And when we know that there's groups out there who are very passionate about providing services to youth, providing services to seniors, aiding poverty in the community. So I think we've got some really good opportunities here that we've just got to get to.
Well said. Thank you for that, Matt. And I just want to add as well that my understanding is that each of the municipalities in themselves must adopt their own the community safety and wellness plan. And that means they would then look at the framework that has been established through the Grey Bruce compilation and develop their own task items as to how they are going to implement the plan at their local level. So we're ahead of that game with having established our own plan and our own tasks that we've identified, as you've said. So are there any further comments, questions on this? Then I will call a question. All in favor of this enhancement going forward? And any against? That is carried. Do we need a break? We're going to be a little bit longer. Do you want a 5-minute break? Yes? Okay. It is 4:36. Can we come back at 4:42? Just turn off your video and your sound, please.